Session at 6. There were no actions taken in closed session. Liz, do you want to lead us in class, please?
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull? I personally would like to pull item 11F. Just for us to get a little presentation on it. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. She have something.
Subject to 11F being taken.
Yeah, well, the police, the 11H, we can also pull for just a explanation on that one.
Police consulting.
Yeah,
And Steve, can you just amend your motion to say approval with the exception
With
of
Liz's addition of 11H, approval of independent contract agreement between Hollister School District and Police Consulting Incorporated.
Is there a second?
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
All right, 11F. Let me,
Well, no recognition.
That's next.
yeah.
Item 9.
community and staff recognition. Tonight's recognition is directed all towards our special education staff. So I want to publicly and very proudly acknowledge a lot of things that our special ed department has done. So as the provider for the most needy children in the county, we are still educating children from all over San Benito County. And our programs serve children with autism, they serve children who are deaf and hard of hearing, they serve children with visual impairments, and children with emotional disturbances. And what our team has been able to do, and actually one of the members that I'm going to recognize is sitting back there helping us with technology, Brandon. Brandon's our lead technology specialist for the district, but he has worked hand in hand with our special education management team, Gwen Bakiran, Mai Cruz, and Daniel Romero, and what they have done to communicate with parents and what they have done to set up webinars for parents. Last week we held 2 webinars. We had almost 200 parents online, and not just in English. We held one solely in Spanish and we held one solely in English, and the pictures, the screenshots of the parents' feedback is just incredible. And the whole focus of it was to explain to parents, how do I make this online program work for my child? How can I make these things fit for my child? The other thing that we're working on now is our technology department is helping all of our instructional assistants be able to have Wi-Fi technology in their household so that they can make phone calls to children with severe needs, so that they get the services that they need, not just from the classroom teacher. Because if you take a classroom, and I'll highlight, we have a wonderful teacher at Aro Hardin named Mrs. Blankenship, and she's got a class of 12 kids. So each one of those children at school, they get all of her attention all day long, and she's got a team of 4 assistants in that classroom. So now that we're fully online, how do we give those 12 children, not 8 hours a day on a computer screen because that's overwhelming, but how do we make them feel that daily support, all of those check-ins? And what happens with the children who are in programs like Mrs. Blankenship's is they don't just receive services from us. They receive services from occupational therapists, from speech language pathologists, from counselors. They get services through the regional center. They get their own services they pay for. So the amount of juggling that we've done and the way that they have put together a supportive program, and I just really want to highlight Mr. Romero and Mrs. Cruz and Mrs. Bakiran as the leaders of that department, and I welcome anybody who wants. Come here at 6:30 p.m. every night. Those 3 cars are in the parking lot with me every night. Those people they're putting in those laundries, and I just really appreciate it.
So are we able to stay compliant in this time of
Well, I wanna give
So
some,
there's one of them now.
I wanna give some, anecdotal experience here. Cause, my grandson, has Mrs. Blankenship and has OT with Mrs. Cervantes and has, speech with Mr. Payne, has Mr. Josh as, class aide. And we've also had Miss Amanda, but I've only seen her once, but Mr. Josh is always there. And my grandson is a typical 6-year-old who has typical 6-year-old behaviors and autistic behaviors as well. And we were doing OT, and he sees Mrs. Blankenship every single day. And sometimes, and it's at the end of his day, so he's had, 3 hours of ABA, he's had maybe time with speech and OT with his paid insurance already, so he's, probably at the end. And we were doing OT, and Charlie was just a pickle. I mean, he was just a real dude. And he's throwing his arms, he's wiping things off the table. I mean, he's just having a total meltdown. And Mr. Cervantes says, I'm gonna call Miss Julia and Mr. Josh. They said that they would help. So boom, she hangs up. 3 minutes later, here they are. I mean, the posse's there. Here comes Charlie's posse. And and so Mr. Josh goes, Charlie, I need you to breathe in, take a big breath, and then breathe out. Now here this kid's been flailing all over the place, hitting his mom, hitting me, throwing things everywhere, and here he goes. He does it for Mr. Josh, And we get through the lesson. It was incredible. And that was all done by distant learning. And she had the ability to get the help that she needed to make that lesson work.
And thank you for sharing that.
And that was just instant. Just instant.
And thank you for sharing that, Jen, because it shows it's not just, okay, here's our schedule, it's these teachers are making connections
Oh,
with
yeah.
families. It's way beyond, here's our schedule, and it's not, if you look at the things that our special ed department produces, one of our coordinators, Mai, actually got her degree in graphic design, so all of our stuff looks really nice too, it's really beautiful. It looks awesome, but it's not about that, it's about really student level service. Okay, what does this family need? I mean, just today, they sent me an email, they said, hey, what can we do? This family we're working with just called us and told us that they don't have internet access, so we need to get them a Wi-Fi hotspot. I send an email to Brandon connects with Mai, 48 hours from now, it'll be all set up for his house. And by the way, a week ago, the child did have internet access. So it wasn't something we missed, it was,
Something happened.
something changed.
Yeah.
Something changed. And so now,
Well, financially.
Can we thank Brandon though too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think,
Brandon, what's
out
your
of,
last name?
out of all of this,
What is it?
I think
Okay.
parents, like you said, that connection that's being built right now is something that didn't exist before. And what a blessing, out of all of this, to be able to see and and really hone in on those kids that we can visually see and make those connections, those strong connections with the teachers and the rest of our staff
Absolutely.
are amazing moving forward, that I think if we were to go back to our traditional, people would miss it because there's nothing like that connection
There's nothing.
and that support for our kids, you know, and as parents, truly appreciating what our teachers do on a day in and day out.
Well,
And all of our support staff.
And one other thing that Ms. Cervantes, you know, what they do, and so does Mrs. Blankenship, is they send out their worksheets and we can download them on our printer at home. And they're personalized.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like for OT, it had Charlie's name on it, and there was Charlie's all into space and stuff, and so there was a rocket ship. You know, it was just totally personalized for Charlie.
And that's what we're doing in this district.
Yeah, and it's incredible. It's just, I mean, the type of dedication and know-how, it just, I tell you, it just.
What happens when you get a quality special ed?
Yes.
That's right, when you get quality.
Makes a big difference.
Mhm.
Which brings me
And-
kind of back, oh, go ahead.
She's only, Mrs. Blankenship, this is her second year.
Well,
Really?
very
Yeah.
good.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You can't lose her.
The only thing, Steve, is it has to be recognition. We can't,
Oh, okay.
so
I
we
was-
can
okay.
bring it up at the end of the meeting.
I read some interesting articles that make me a little concerned, so that's why I wanted to
What
talk
Mr.
about
Rose?
Item 10, Madam Clerk, any public comments?
Has anything come through on email or phone?
No email and there are no phone calls.
No, Mr. President.
it.
On to the next. So, normally how we do consent agenda when items are pulled, we act on the unpulled items first, and then we get to the pulled items. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that excludes items 11F and 11H.
I'll make a motion to accept 11A, B, C, D, E, G, I, and J.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. I said
All opposed?
Oh, yeah.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, 11F, that was my turn.
No, it's 11A, isn't it?
11F.
Oh, 11F, okay.
11F is an approval of contract between the Hollister School District and Paxton Patterson Incorporated. If you can remember back about 6 months ago, we did a presentation for the board on STEM elective. I showed you about a 3-minute video of middle schoolers.
Oh, yeah.
This was awesome.
About 9 months ago, I got connected with a couple of school districts that are somewhat local over in Marina and Salinas Union High School District. And I took Diana Herbst and Caroline Calero and Vicki Smith with me to Salinas Union High School District.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched 9th graders do,
8th grader.
well, that day it was 9th graders.
Oh,
We saw 9th graders do CTE projects that I've never seen anything less than a junior or senior in high school do. And the reason was because of a program developed by Paxton Patterson, which basically allows kids to try out a lot of different CTE programs without taking a full year course in one CTE program. And so what's before the board tonight is a proposal to purchase a learning system specifically for maize that we designed in conjunction with San Benito High School. So we got our career tech ed coordinator from the high school, and we connected her with our 2 middle school principals and with the Paxton Patterson representative, who said, okay, if we want these kids to get to the high school and have an interest in the CTE programs that are there, what kind of labs should they do in middle school? So we designed the lab that we're gonna install at Mays using the high school in conjunction with Paxton Patterson. And then, as I told the board in a previous board meeting, we wrote a grant called the K-12 Strong Workforce Program Grant the district was awarded $112,000, so this is actually being paid for with those grant funds.
Nice.
And at the next board meeting, we'll bring a proposal for Rancho San Luis.
Nice.
Well, my interest in this was, first of all, I'm glad that we did pause on this, because now I do remember that video.
Yep.
And I think one of my questions was, or it was at least stated, was which kids is this reaching? Because when it comes to science, my one dream, and maybe we've already made it come true, but a couple of years ago, I was made aware that like our sixth graders at Rancho don't go to science camp. And that was huge to me, because we had just watched a video of Scott, of AAA at science camp, and Scott's being all emotional in a positive way about watching kids walking through a stream and collecting campus. And I just remembered, it's like, wow, you mean not every kid gets to go to science camp? No. So when we're spending money on this, that's why I just want to make sure it's reaching all of the kids and exposing them, not just the ones that are obviously destined for college. And number two is, given where we are today, you know, is this a luxury? Because, you know, aren't we all, you know, a great deal of people are scared that kids are losing so much right now. Do we need to concentrate on the reading, writing, and arithmetic more just to keep that skill level up? That's all.
So we absolutely have funding to pay for this lab. In addition, the district, because our two middle schools have had low achievement in English and math and have had excessive suspensions and excessive absenteeism, we have a whole separate pot of money. So when I originally thought of this program and started to bring people into the fold, I imagined that we'd have one class at Rancho and one class at Mays. Because we wrote the grant and we received the money, and because our schools are participating in the CSI program, which gives each school $150,000 a year to improve math and English education, we'll be able to purchase a 6th grade lab, a 7th grade lab, and an 8th grade lab at all 3 schools, or at all 2 schools. And in the future, we'll be able to rotate the labs to Calaveras and Gavilan Hills HDLA and Lad Lane and Sarah Vista, because the labs themselves are pick up and move. We're not spending a lot of money repurposing classrooms.
On the room.
And then what Rob, what you mentioned was, so how do we get all kids access to this? You do it by offering it 5 periods a day. It won't work if it's only 1 period a day. So this first year, because we're just getting started, at Rancho there'll be 4 periods a day, and at Mays there'll be 3 periods a day. But in the future, there will be 5 periods a day for each grade level, because the system we set up at Rancho and Mays, the teachers teach their own elective in 6th grade. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna provide those teachers with the training on Paxton Patterson, and we're gonna rotate their electives. So all day long, the teacher will move into their elective class, take their kids to the Paxton Patterson lab, and every 6th grader at those schools will have Paxton Patterson. When you get to 7th and 8th grade, you're gonna have kids who just wanna take music, or just wanna take leadership and don't wanna take the Paxton Patterson elective. So I would say it would probably get down to closer to 70% of the kids in 7th and 8th grade taking the class. But in 6th grade, it'll be pretty close to 100%.
That's awesome.
Okay, yeah, because I just want to make sure it's not the elite kids that are getting this, it's,
And it's specifically children with special needs. They thrive in this program, because what happens is, in this program, so if you take a look at the description of the labs that we're purchasing, this is what they're gonna have in the Rancho San Luis lab. Veterinary medicine, sports medicine, robot Lego Mindstorm, robotics, personal finance, materials processing, intro to culinary arts, and each one of those is its own distinct lab that takes a group of kids 2 to 3 weeks to finish. And they just
So they were rotating, I remember that
In the
video.
video.
Rotation through
That's
the
what they do.
different-
That's awesome.
But the things they do in 6th grade will be different than the things they do in 7th and 8th grade. So they'll never repeat the same lab. And because we wrote this grant and got this extra money, we're now able, so what we plan to do is, okay, the 6th grade lab at Rancho for 2021, in 2022, we move it to Rancho San Juan School. And those 6th graders get to use it because they're different kids.
So that was
And
my,
then they
that was my
rotate the
next,
next year, and and it just
yeah,
keeps
that was my
moving.
next question. It seemed like when I read
You
this,
just keep
it was
rotating.
just gonna be for Mays and Rancho.
It'll be district-wide.
So all the K-8 schools will have the same that's what I was concerned about.
Because we'll write the K-12 Strong Workforce Program grant again,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
on the strength of the one we wrote and received, very likely that we'll receive it again.
Gotcha.
And when we're talking about having schools that we can be proud of, this is what you're looking at. You're looking at kids coming home and saying, I built a website using my phone. I went to school and I learned how to cook at school. I feel confident, I feel proud, and the teacher is the guide. The teacher is not talking for 30 minutes and having kids write worksheets. The kids are actually doing it.
That's
Well,
awesome.
personal finance, I mean, some basic skill sets that we're not teaching our kids anymore.
Yeah.
You know, what it is to have a credit card, what it is to have a checking account, you know, and things of that nature, to know how much you take in versus how much you spend.
Absolutely.
I know that Diana and I remember Vicky talking about it. They were both excited because I saw them after
Yeah,
that day
yeah,
that they did.
I did too.
They were just really, they were walking on air.
Yeah.
Well, it gives people, or it gives kids who aren't gonna do well taking tests, something to excel at.
Yeah.
It's an equalizer.
Yeah. Definitely.
I totally agree.
So,
What's the other one?
So somebody would need to make a motion on this item so that then we can discuss 11H separately.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept 11F.
Second?
all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
11H is an approval of an independent contractor agreement between the Hollister School District and Police Consulting Incorporated. So about 6 months ago, we received new directives and requirements going into the 2020 calendar year, that we have a requirement of doing labor monitoring reports, basically. So if you think about the job out at Rancho Santana School, what we're now required to do is we are required to submit regular reports that explain the percentage of employees who are union and non-union. And we're required to basically monitor, but the reason that we're asking for this contract to be approved by the board is that right now, if I asked our staff, meaning in that department, it would be either Adela or Aaron, it would not, they do not have the time to be able to provide that level of attention because they have so many contractors coming in and out of that job site. The contractors can sometimes be there for as little as 3 weeks. So we would need to have them pull in the information from that contractor, do the analysis of the type of employees they have, create the report, and at the same time, do the same type of reporting with the electrical contractor and the same kind of reporting with the soils contractor. And so what we're asking for here is for the board's approval to allow Police Consulting, which is Carolyn Police that works in the back there, to basically just continue doing that reporting for us.
And
that's-
this
that's
30,000 would come out of the building fund?
That's right.
Okay.
You know, my only comment regarding this is, that's an annualized rate of $193,000 a year. And like, I just hired a CPA to do 25 hours worth of work for me here locally, and I only pay that entity $50 an hour. So it's just, it seems really pricey. And if I'm not mistaken, because we know this firm in this district, it's not a CPA doing the work, it's you know, so anyway, it just seems pricey for, and it's 322 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, I have a gauge, I know what I have 4 accounts. I gotta be careful because we're on the camera here, but, and they don't earn that rate. In fact, that's close to,
How much do they approximately earn?
well, mine all have over 20 years. I'm a private company, but,
Just that
nowhere near
ballpark.
that.
So it would be a good,
Let's say 90-ish.
But they don't have to be to a job site and know the difference between which contractor does what, and how much time, and they don't have to have that expertise, do they?
Well, mine are, we're a pretty sophisticated company, so, but.
But I mean, they don't have to be at the job site knowing who does what, when, and what time, and how many, you know what I mean? They don't have to have that detailed expertise, do
No,
they?
but if they did, they would get paid to be there, and that's my question is, are we paying for them to travel there and stuff?
No, they're here. They're here. They work out of our district office.
So you wouldn't be able to get a competitive bid to,
I would advise against that because the project is already, at this point, 60% complete. So it would, create some pretty major problems if we brought a different person in to then try to figure out how to kind of pick up where this person left off.
they've been doing some of the work.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah. They've been here.
they've been here. Okay, this is not a new,
so it doesn't
This
really
is
seem like.
extending it from April into June.
That's right.
it's just extending.
We really don't have any options, is what you're saying.
I view this as a good option. I'm looking at this and saying, we know it's a very important task. I know as the superintendent, we don't have our own employee who could do this. And I'm way more concerned about bringing in somebody I don't know, who doesn't know the job site and doesn't know the work. I would probably agree with Rob that 93 is high, but I think, that's basically where we landed and that's what I'm presenting.
But they're going through records, right? They're not observing a person and saying, let me see your union card. They're relying on the records from the vendor.
Right, but I think it's, I highlighted that one portion of it, but there are obviously other tasks that they assist us with.
Well, there's a lot, you have a description under the bond requisition request, right? Those are all some of the description of the duties that person would be doing.
That's right. And this takes us through the completion of the school, so it takes us through June of 2021. Takes us all the way through. Which is just around the corner, folks. If you haven't seen that school,
Yeah.
drive
I
by.
drove by there, I was like, ah.
I do drive by.
In order to avoid drawing attention to it, I haven't posted any new articles. I don't want somebody to go out there and tell us to stop, but it's really exciting to see.
Yeah.
Good.
So
Can we
that's my
make a
story,
motion?
folks.
Yeah, okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve, what is it?
11H.
11H.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Nay. Motion carries 4-1.
information item 12A. This is an information item pertaining to online migrant summer school. Tonight's presentation is focused on a couple of different things, and the first is the idea behind wanting to provide children who are in our migrant education program continued learning so that we intervene in the summer slide, as some people will call it, or basically the regression in academic growth that the research tells us happens when kids don't go to school for, in our district, it would be, not 3 months, but, getting pretty close to that, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of kids being out of school. And so what's different about this year, obviously, is we're faced with this health crisis, this pandemic. And what we're trying to do this year is we're trying to figure out a way
Bless you.
to develop a program that's online, that has independent activities, and that provides children with print-based learning kits and workbooks. So the way we envision the program is we envision children using the highest quality curriculum. So Orton Gillingham is nationally renowned as being one of the best reading programs available. So our plan is to use Orton Gillingham trained teachers and Orton Gillingham training to offer children web classes, to connect it with daily Footsteps of Brilliance instruction, and to focus at the K to third level on those early literacy practices. For fourth and fifth grade, the plan is to have integrated ELD lessons, building their academic language while developing content skills with listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We have curriculum selected and ready to implement for those 2 grade levels. And then if you look at grades 6 through 8, we have adopted a new program called Constructing Meaning. It's generally considered the best ELD staff development and curriculum available nationwide. And what it teaches is the concept that in every single class, children are learning language. In science, they are learning language. In math, they are learning language. In art, they're learning language. And in English, they're learning language. So the concept is a 360-degree language learning program for kids. And they sell kits that are somewhat expensive that we've set aside funding to pay for these kits so that our teachers can conduct these online lessons using Constructing Meaning kits, and that we would provide students in their home with these Constructing Meaning materials taking place in their house. So what we feel really good about is that we're not simply saying, here's a packet, work on it by yourself and we'll call you every 30 minutes. We're truly integrating. Your lesson will be at this time. Your independent work is this work. Your online work is this work. Your end of the day check-in is this work. And we've been able to organize a summer school program that has also allowed us to purchase some pretty exciting Lego robotics curriculum for our students. So what the district did for many years is the district paid for staff to come a week before summer school. We would pay a group of staff members, sometimes as many as 6 or 7 staff members, to work in a workshop setting like this and actually develop lessons for every day. And then those staff members would typically not teach students in the summer school program. They would, on a daily basis, prepare new materials to give to teachers that they would put in tubs and they would set for the teachers to be able to implement with kids. But what happens in a situation like that is you put a tremendous stress on the staff to keep that going, and if it doesn't connect by grade level, then it's not really, because those same kids come back and do summer school every year.
Yeah.
So that you create gaps by using curriculum that way, and what we decided this year is we're going to get the best for our students, and we're going to give migrant children Lego robotics kits that they will have in their house to be able to use over summer, that are integrated in a way where for the very youngest kids, the kinder, first and second graders, they call it the Simple Machines curriculum. And basically you build, using your kit and using the directions, you build the device that is intended for that lesson. And you have a very simple switch that will actually turn it, so like one of them is a boat that will rock in the ocean. But it won't work if you don't follow the exact process that you're supposed to follow. So we purchased this curriculum because what it does is it makes kids sit next to each other and talk to each other and build the robot together using the script and using the steps. It's gonna be different because we're gonna do it with kids, isolating in their own homes, but we're going to give these kids those materials.
So I have a question. I know in the past, one of our biggest challenges have been getting our kids to enroll in summer school. Our numbers have gone down. And so with this, how many students can we reach? Because I know we have a system in place within my grant structure to hit our PFS, priority of services, then our at risk, and then our general students. But is there a possibility we could target everyone? Or are we looking at targeting 800? Are we looking at targeting 1,000? What are we looking at as far as numbers, as far as reaching, and then age group of knowing what our population is to service as many students as we can, so that we can increase those numbers.
Let me walk them through what you just said, because you just put a lot out there. So what Elizabeth is saying is, in our district, we have 3 different categories of children who are migrant. One is called priority for service. Those are children who are part of a group that we know that have moved in the last 24 to 36 months,
Last year,
in the last year.
yes.
Then
You said that there's what, priority?
priority for service, PFS.
Okay, and
At
how many,
risk,
do we have of those?
I don't wanna speculate, but it's about 1,000 total, and it's a pretty small number. It might be in the 125, 150 number. I'll get that.
That's
number.
the smallest group.
It's a small group. And then you have an at-risk group, and that's a bigger number. So in our district, it tends to be in the 275, 350.
So you have your
range.
PFS, you're at the top, you're at risk, take a bigger chunk of your numbers, and then you have your general, all other students, other migrants.
Other migrant students. So what happens with migrant education funding is you'll receive funding for providing service to all 1,000 students in the program. But what we suffer with in the Hollister district is year after year, we average somewhere about 365 kids. So what happens is we lose that money. So do the math. Last year, we received $225,000 for summer, but we only served 365 kids. If we were able to make that number go to 900, how much would we receive?
And you get additional funding for those at-risk and PFS students.
Really? They
In
get more money?
addition, yes, the
So-
district will generate more funding for summer for those specific
Really?
students being served, yes.
So we basically budgeted for an additional parent liaison for summer, because our parent liaisons and our recruiters do the bulk of the work to get the kids involved in the summer program. So we went from having 3 parent liaisons in summer to having 4 parent liaisons in summer, and we're bringing them in earlier to sign more kids up in the program. And I wanna share something very exciting. Actually, Steve heard it with me. Steve and I were over at R.O. Hardin yesterday morning, or Monday morning. Yeah, yesterday morning. And,
Monday, yeah.
What happened was we ran into a teacher, and R.O. Hardin is our biggest school in terms of percentage of migrant students. And so we were exchanging pleasantries, and I said, how's it going reaching your students? She said, I have 25 students. I wasn't happy with the results I had the first week, so I just kept calling and kept hounding them. I called every number over and over again. I've reached every single student except one. I have been in contact
25?
academically with 24 of 25
Wow.
R.O. Hardin students. And then the principal came to a meeting yesterday afternoon and says, school-wide, we have made contact with all but 4 students.
Wow.
Wow, that's
Awesome.
Because what we've had to do is we've now had to say, we can't just pull a kid in from class and say, here, take this to your mom. We have to call.
yeah.
And what we have is in each of those schools, we have secretaries using this thing nonstop. Calling, getting families on the phone, getting families engaged. So as far as our number for service, Liz, is gonna go up really high. We're planning on 675 this summer, and then
Awesome.
each summer after that, growing it even more.
So I had a question that I was thinking, and now it's even more, if you could help us. So, and you brought it up last time, our farm worker communities. The reality is, the summer is when they work,
That's right.
which is why this program is so important for the kids, because it kind of serves as a place for them to be. So, number one, the question is, do you think there's any possibility of any kind of in-person transitioning, even if there's some, and I know nobody has a crystal ball, but if possible, I think that would help families and the kids. And then secondly, knowing that, you know, we have this attendance, you know, especially at our Hardin, are we gonna tailor it with different hours? Because like you said the other day, some parents take their kids to work, so even if you're offering, you know, Google Meet or whatever, class at 12 or 1, and they're not available, how, even this is so great, but if they're not available to be in it, are we able to offer a later afternoon sessions, or are we gonna tailor it? And then, the next thing is, can we use our KMPG to put out, hey, you know, Hollister School District is offering Programa Migrante, vengan, inscríbense, kind of stuff.
The answer is yes, pertaining to offering, especially the public announcements and getting more attention to it. But I wanna really highlight what that teacher said at our Hardin, which was, I didn't give up. I just kept calling. I called again, and when I didn't reach them, she said, I hounded these parents until I reached them. And what happens is the parents are not sitting there, you know, checking their phone and ignoring
They're
them.
working.
They're working.
They're working.
They're caring for their family. They're out. They are working.
They're
And, you
essential.
know, and some of these parents, they don't leave their phone with the kids because they'll use the data.
Yeah.
So they turn the phone off and they put it in their pocket. And then when they get their 15-minute break, they go, oh, I have a call from the school. I'm not gonna call from my job. I'm gonna wait till I get home. What time is that? At 6 p.m.
Right.
The school's closed. And what that teacher taught us was, we just keep going. We just keep going. And district-wide, I've asked principals to develop lists for each school of families we haven't reached. Because we are not, district-wide, we are not giving up on those students. We are going to reach those families. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was, so let's talk about Zoom and Google Meet. Because unfortunately, Zoom and Google Meet are extremely intense in terms of data usage. They're live and they're extremely costly in the sense of children having to be on Zoom. Now, I know I pay about $225 a month for my phone service. Kip Ward told me he pays almost $350, which made me pretty much faint. And I think, you know, we have unlimited plans, so I never even think about it. You know, my child wants to go on Footsteps of Brilliance, wants to go on Google Meet with his parents. We had a family call us because the mother's now out of work because the child so badly wanted to be in the Google Meet that the parent missed work for 2 days to drive her child to McDonald's so that they could log into the free Wi-Fi at McDonald's. And so, you know, the family is now calling us for more assistance because the step in between was the Wi-Fi and the data usage. So we're developing quotes right now and writing grants right now to try to get free Wi-Fi hotspots and try to get devices that have Wi-Fi internally enabled in the Chromebooks. Because what we're realizing we have to do is we have to find the families that really need Wi-Fi and we have to provide it to them. And the migrant families are included in that, and we did receive verification today from Santa Clara County Office of Education that we are able to use migrant education funds to provide Wi-Fi to children in the migrant program.
Well, we've been doing it for the high school for a few years now. So we provide Chromebooks, we purchase Chromebooks, and we buy hotspots for those students that cannot, you know, do not have a computer at home and do not have internet. So
So you can get that funding from those.
And, well, it's just, you've already set it aside as part of your servicing,
It's a
you know,
service
for
function.
students. It's an essential function for them, especially now.
Yeah.
Por más razón, you know, we're using a lot of our, since we're not at work, you know, spending it on teachers and after-school programs and food, et cetera. We're spending it on buying more Chromebooks and more hotspots for this. And so for us as Hollister, for summer school, you know, thinking about, you know, because we also service some students that aren't necessarily like Southside. Are they, because you have the camp up there that we
service.
at the high school go because we have some high schoolers that, you know, end up at the Southside camp. But are they still pushing some of their kids, are they gonna funnel some of those true migrants families over to us, or are they gonna be able to do this themselves? Cause I know
Do they
migrant for
usually?
them is,
Do they usually?
well, they've lost a lot of funding. Just in general, just,
How would that
it's
work?
tough for them. But you know,
Up to
there
this-
are some students that enroll in our migrant summer school.
Oh, okay.
See, and that's where I'm trying to figure out what our balance will be there, you know, how many students we'll be able to reach and service for summer that are out of our bound, you know, district.
But do you still get money for the, doesn't matter, right?
We receive funding for the kids we serve, but to this,
It's who provides the service
Okay.
to the student that will generate the funding.
so the districts have to agree, you know, you have to. So we haven't made that agreement yet,
Okay,
but we're prepared if we need to.
okay.
So the other piece is we now have adopted for migrant summer school a math curriculum called Zern Math. And I want to encourage anybody who's interested in just, because we're all sheltering in place at home, go online and see this program.
We are all not.
Your
Some of
children are.
it's, some of my kids
Your children
are.
Hey, put them on there.
Put them on
Go
there.
on Zern Math, and basically what it does is, it's sort of incredible that they have created this free service. It is absolutely no cost to the district or to teachers.
Wow.
And what it does is it takes the high-quality math curriculum that we're now teaching kids through Eureka Math, and it creates grade level by grade level, step-by-step instruction with integrated videos and integrated math activities. So what happens right now is kids will go on YouTube and they'll watch a 20-minute video on Khan Academy, right? Like how to complete the square.
Right.
Then they'll have to pause that video and go to their math work and do their math work and maybe go back and check to see if they matched all the steps up. What Zern Math does is Zern Math takes the video itself and puts it in their website. So as the video's progressing and they're showing you the steps, the video stops.
No
and it makes
way.
you practice 2 or 3
Oh,
Nice.
examples, but at the right time. It's not like you watch a 20-minute video and then you do a
Then you
math
gotta
worksheet.
remember to try to do the stuff.
It's happening, and if you get it wrong, it gives you another
This
question.
is free.
Wow.
It's free. And it's extremely high quality, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna spend a few $1,000s because the only thing that they'll charge you for is for each school, if you wanna be able to pull reports from students, and that's very important for migrant, you do have to pay $2,500 per school per year, so it's an extremely low cost. And it'll cover all of our students all year long,
Really?
because our plan is to continue with Saturday Scholars, even if we have to do it online. And this program, like, we're gonna
Give you
get
the
kids in the
results
program,
and,
it will be 12 months. I'll be able to show the board and show parents at any time of the year, this is how our migrant students are progressing on Zern Math.
Do you need a password? Anything
It's
from the
really
school?
easy what happens is it's integrated with Google, and all of our children have
Okay.
Google accounts, so they log into their Google account and it creates their Zern account.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
wow.
Yeah, so if all of you have internet at home and have a Google email at home, you can sign in using
Well,
Google.
it's from here, the Google email.
Yeah. Yeah, you can sign in with your district
So
Google.
you just put Zern in the.
Zern Math, yeah, and log in, it's really easy to use, it's totally free, like, what a lot of teachers do, because districts won't adopt this for the whole district, so you'll just have pockets of teachers using it, because the teachers can sign themselves and up to 30 kids up for free, and there's no fee, but they can't
Generate
print
those
those
reports,
reports and
yeah.
do all the comparisons and show
Right.
growth, and it's all an instructional tool. But for our migrant students, what they're gonna have is they're gonna have the hands-down strongest reading program in Orton-Gillingham. They're gonna have Lego robotics, the best science, technology, engineering, and math program.
Wow.
And they're gonna have Zern Math all summer, and for all those, all year. These are not things we're just trying out right now. Because what we've been doing for many years is we've been creating things on our own, but when that teacher leaves or that principal leaves, it's gone.
New thing, yeah.
So this is now a system that
Which is what we
follows year
needed,
by
yeah.
year.
Right.
So a child, like, I actually feel kind of happy for my kindergartners who are migrant, because they're gonna go get the reading support, the STEM support, the math support
They're gonna get,
for 6 years.
Constantly.
Yeah,
It'll be a nice
everything-
pilot project.
So the Zern math is, what grades does that cover?
It goes currently kindergarten through 5th grade, and then they plan in about 6 months to open it up 6th through 8th grade. So our plan for 6th through 8th grade is Eureka Math, and we have an online component for that as well.
So Diego, first of all, I sent you a text today or whatever, but I'm gonna say it in front of everyone. This presentation, which is in a binder full of great presentations, is just awesome from my point of view. But what I wanted to ask is, has anybody called any of the cellular carriers or any of the networking companies and said, how do we solve the problem for the Hollister School District? Because the only thing I know is, it's not published because it's private, but like, if you're a Farm Bureau member and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you have internet access because the Farm Bureau here locally invested and they beam a signal out and you can have it. But also I know that like for the Garden Festival or even our county fair and for much bigger things like that, these companies, they put in a wide area network so that 50,000 people at once can have Wi-Fi on this. And I guess my point is there's got to be a solution to getting these migrant families Wi-Fi, whether it's Verizon or T-Mobile agreeing to not charge for data for those families that are deserving of that, or how do you provide it Wi-Fi access so that at least they can get our distance learning?
Yeah.
I mean,
The answer to your question is myself and Brandon are taking the lead on that. So I want to talk you through a couple of options that we have on the table right now. So one is we have an agreement with AT&T, that's our carrier that we use in the district for our cell phones. AT&T has a plan that's somewhat, I would call it a mid-range data plan, so it wouldn't work perfectly for all of our students. That's a $24 a month per device plan. So if we expect to give it to children for 12 months a year, knowing right now, we don't really know when we're gonna open schools or close schools because of the pandemic. The cost for that will be $500,000 a year to give a Wi-Fi access to 1,200 kids. That's the number we've identified as based on all those phone calls we made already. But there's a program through this company that is offering the Wi-Fi hotspots with the service through any service carrier we select. It could be Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile. And that service works more like a pool. So if we think of ourselves as students in a class, I have 5 gigs a month, Carla has 5 gigs a month, Elizabeth, and we all have combined 30 gigs of data a month. But let's say for whatever reason in August, our teachers didn't give us as much work to do. So we actually only used it for the 10 days that we were in school in August. So maybe we only used 6 gigs of data. Those other 24 gigs move into the next month.
Right.
So that's a nice program where it rolls over and it's pooled, and it's all district-wide pooled.
What is that?
The name of the company is Kajit, K-A-J-E-T.
That's what we use, is it Kajit?
Oh, yeah.
The hotspots are Kajit.
Yeah, and it's, it's a somewhat easy program to roll out. It's SIPA compliant, so it means that we meet all the federal guidelines that we have to filter content so that our students don't observe or participate in inappropriate things at home using our Wi-Fi access. So that's another one. We've costed that out at either $400,000 for 3 gigs a month or $700,000 for 5 gigs a month for the whole year for the whole district. But another opportunity came our way today, and that was there's a school district currently working on installing very large antenna at 7 of their schools. Because we currently have Wi-Fi access at all our schools, but we have small access points. It's probably on the other side of that wall. But we have, it's right there. We have small access points like that.
Mhm.
And what this Visalia Unified School District has decided is they're going to put up 10-foot antenna on their campuses
Really?
and create a big, basically cast a big bubble,
Nice.
and all the kids can log in.
That's farm worker area too.
So we're looking at that right now, because we think, okay, I know where I would put it in town, right? Think about Rancho San Justo,
Oh,
that
yeah.
whole neighborhood, boom,
Maze,
I know exactly where I'm putting it. Okay,
Calavera.
think about Maze, I know where to put it there.
west side.
Calaveras, right here. Aro Arden, over on the ECE side, cast that on
Cast
there.
that way.
Over on the front
That's
school,
one, yeah.
that's that.
That's a great
So we're
idea.
looking at that one. They're a bigger district. They are basically 29,000 students, and they put it at 11 different sites. I counted, we would really want to focus it more on about 5 of our sites. And then for the other students, we could do Wi-Fi hotspots. So they spent about $700,000 to install their system, but it's a one-time fee,
One time.
and you're not paying that again the second year or third year. So
Right.
That's
if
a
it would
great
cost
idea.
us 375, 400, 450,000, we'd have to think about it pretty hard. Because if we go into next year and don't provide children with Wi-Fi access at home, we are turning the other way and ignoring the
Going backwards.
reality
We're going
of children,
backwards.
Right.
That's what we're doing.
children who have money with their
Well,
parents
it's
have access.
the inequity,
And low-income
you know,
children do
inequity,
not
you
have
can't,
access.
yeah, they won't be.
And the migrant students are one subset.
Mhm.
There's special ed children that are extremely low income. There's general ed students that are low
Low
income.
income,
There are white students, there are African American students, there are
Yeah.
Asian students, there are Latino students. Every group, poverty touches everybody.
Well, and don't,
especially right now, if,
well, and I was
Two,
thinking,
you
like,
know,
right
people
now
aren't
you have this group that's low income. But
But
the
it's
way the
growing.
economy is going, you're gonna have
more
more,
students.
unfortunately.
We're looking at that, there's a grant opportunity through Sprint called the 1 million project that just got renamed the 10 million project. And, oh yeah, and the goal
Needs
is
to
to
be.
get Wi-Fi enabled computers into the hands of kids.
Wow.
So we're applying for that grant,
Awesome.
trying to get as many of those reduced costs for us. So we're just trying a lot of different things and trying to figure out how to do it. As far as the migrant student program is concerned, we expect to have the Wi-Fi enabled devices. We expect to have the whole system working for these students by the time we open up the program the 3rd week in June. And the program will run the same amount of time and the same number of hours, and our staff is already, both of our employee unions have come to the table and agreed on the way we structured it, and everybody's excited. And the cool thing is, all of the curriculum we purchased, we're keeping it. It's not going anywhere. All of that hardware that we purchased for these kids, and it's just really amazing to see migrant students who have never been able to touch a Lego, and not just have a box of
Yeah.
Legos, but to have,
I know.
I mean, for the middle school, it's actual robots.
Wow.
It's actual, you know, these kids
Pretty
are,
neat,
they're
yeah.
$300 a kid.
No, right.
What better way to develop higher level thinking?
Yeah.
Really.
Where is the material gonna be stored?
At the district office.
Okay.
Everything's stored at the district office,
Perfect.
and the other thing I wanna make clear to the, you know, is we put a high priority on getting these really quality experience to students.
Mm-hmm.
So we took things that were in the old plan, because we had an average of about 11 to 14 kids in each class in summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's nice to be able to do that, but when you do that, you lose the ability to purchase curriculum for
Right.
students.
Right.
So our new staffing is closer to 19 kids per class,
Mm-hmm.
but they have the very best materials to work with. And the stress level on the staff comes down, because now we're paying for their Lego robotics training.
Mhm.
We're paying for the kids to be in the kids' homes. And the teachers will absolutely love teaching the program. And I believe it'll actually cause us in a year or a little bit more to have teachers who say, I wanna work with our middle schoolers to do a competitive Lego, because there's a whole structure built behind,
I'm excited.
yeah.
Now, Carla's comment as far as the farm workers
Yeah.
and the apartments where they live, I know there's like a common area to where maybe we could have the students there, somehow working with the residential, apartment complex, people, and finding out ways that we could, if the parents have to work, that our kids can still participate in this ways, with some supervision,
A satellite,
like a
Ish.
satellite plant, but, so that we're able to
like at the labor camp.
remotely do, yes, cause I know even the labor
Good
camp
idea.
has a common, area
That's a good idea.
that we could utilize, for our kids to go and make that connection, and still be able to participate and do these things with our district. But, it's just thinking of different ways of, we can do outreach and, once the shelter in place is lifted, of course, we gotta start knocking at those doors of students that have been MIA for all this time, and figure out what's going on and just doing those, those wellness checks to see, if everything's okay.
Absolutely agree.
But this is awesome. I mean, the fact that we can
So
do
impressive.
this, and unfortunately, I know it's up to the districts to figure out how to do this. And this is exceptional. For us to have developed a plan like this for our migrant students and give them what they've needed for such a long time, it is just, awesome.
If you didn't just say, oh, let's just do the same old online thing, no, you guys, those of you who developed this really put a lot of
There's a lot
thought
of
and
thought in
effort,
this,
so thank you.
Patricia, Caroline,
That's-
staff, and
Appreciate it.
a lot of levels of learning are addressed in this.
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Awesome.
Well, it's putting our children first,
That's
Yeah.
right.
that's what it's all about.
I'm all for it.
Mhm.
Mr. Bronowski, we ready for 12B?
I believe we are.
2019 to 2020 online extended school year plan. So this is a plan that is separate from our migrant summer school plan. It is a plan that we provide specifically for children with special needs.
Wow.
The plan will take place, you can start to see in the PowerPoint, this is where our special ed coordinator that has a background with graphic design, you can see her beautiful descriptions of how it's going to work. Her infographics that she created for it, so the components involve learning packets, what Jan talked about earlier tonight. We are talking about individualized, child by child learning packets. Packets that say, such and such, Martinez, grade 1, here is your packet. It has materials that are specifically for you to help you with your IEP goals. A synchronous platform, which means we teach using Google Meet online at 9 a.m. and your appointment's at 9 a.m. and I will see you at 9 a.m. every day. And then an asynchronous platform, which means we have uploaded this video for you and your parents to watch at any time, any day, that will reinforce what we taught you during the online lesson or review something we already learned. Life skills instruction, which means using the online platform and the video platform, actually modeling and giving examples for children who need so much support with their life skills, their executive functioning skills, putting on their t-shirt, tying their shoelaces, working in the kitchen, working in their home, all of this, the skills that we teach children with special needs in the classroom will also be taught. Virtual field trips, as you can tell, we'll set up virtual field trips for children to be able to experience places online that we can take them to, which is the best we can do this summer with social distancing. And then mental health and wellness, so we'll continue to provide counseling supports. Later in the presentation, I talked about a program called TheraLink. It's a HIPAA-approved online secure therapy platform that will allow our staff to be able to not just use Google Meet, which there's always a concern that somebody else will log in, somebody, using their techniques to be able to find out the code and log into your meeting code. TheraLink is a program that basically, for pretty low cost, will provide really high level of internet security so that the counseling session between the child and the staff is very secure. And then it's actually houses data for us so that we can, like we said earlier, monitor the services that we're giving to the kids. But it will facilitate us to continue to have health and wellness counseling services. Then we have meals and community resources. As you know, we are the county leader in feeding children, and it's not close. It's by several touchdowns, we're winning.
By far.
Yeah, we served again, that was actually
That's what,
48,000 yesterday. The
Yeah.
week before was 50, so this week 48,000, so we're figuring out, we're going back to the drawing board to figure out where my other 2,000.
I'll tell you what, it is beautifully organized.
It's a system.
It is beautifully organized, and I have to admit, I almost had a tear in my eye just watching the parents come up, and you can tell they really appreciate this. This isn't something, and it was just marvelous. The ladies that were doing it, always good-natured, knew exactly, totally organized, had everything ready to go. Really well done.
Every school has multiple tables set up.
Yep.
And as the car drives up, they're doing hand signals, 4, 3, 2.
Yeah.
We have everything in cardboard boxes, big sturdy cardboard boxes. We wash them out. When we bag our vegetables and fruits, we bag single, so if you only have one child, it's a pink bag. If you have 2 children, it's a red bag. So we put the correct number of fruits and vegetables. So if you put up your hand and you say 3, I'm taking a pink and a red and giving them to you. If you say 5,
okay.
I'm taking
Yeah.
2 and 2. You say, and it makes it really fast to get
And
them.
it has to be, because you
It's
have a
all
lot of
set on the
cars.
table.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no person-to-person contact. The parent walks out, grabs their food, takes it. And so
That's perfect.
what we're now planning is now actually developing a delivery schedule, because we do have families that we know
Still counts.
can't get the food that way.
Yeah.
So we're developing a program to actually deliver and
High school does
here's
it.
your food and deliver it to your doorstep.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
Yeah, so, and that will just make the numbers go up and up even more. So the program for both migrant and for online special education summer school involves daily feeding of kids, and we're submitting a request to the state to allow us to continue to provide food service indefinitely, even beyond those days, to be able to offer food services, and maybe not at the same scale, because people do have to have time off, but
Yeah.
to continue to provide, because we're feeding this community right now. And one of the nice things about, they kind of forced us to do this right away, and it was hard. Those first 3 weeks were just a blinding.
You made a lot of improvements from the very first, believe me, it's a lot more efficient, a
Well,
lot
that
more.
was Ann, wasn't
Yeah.
it? It was Ann,
And what, so one example is, we no longer give kids milk cartons that are single use, because what we realized is, okay, what happens is if you do that, then there's waste that goes
Yeah.
along with it.
Yeah.
And so what we figured out was, okay, well, let's start to give kids pints. And what happens with that is, now that goes in my refrigerator. So now I'm using it for my snack and my breakfast and my lunch
Right.
and my dinner.
So good.
And it's really stretching it out.
Right.
So it's just nice to see the thought and the focus that we put into not just saying, we have to do this, here it is, but because the spirit of this summer school program, the individualization of it, the coordination of it, because what we're gonna do is speech, occupational therapy, adaptive PE, counseling service, counseling, therapeutic service, and then programs for moderate to severe and mild to moderate. It's a jigsaw. It's 50 different plans all working at the same time and
And
so
customizing it, each and
customizing
every
it
one.
for each show.
Yeah.
June 23rd through July 31st.
Okay.
June, what is it again?
June
23rd,
23rd, it's in your packet, I
Yeah,
think,
right here.
that,
June 23rd to July 31st.
is that the same dates for migrant summer school?
The migrant summer school is likely to start a week earlier, only because of the way, the way funding works for migrant, you kind of have to, you want to get a certain amount of the money spent in that first week.
Right, because you gotta do a lot of prepping, to get things going and prepared.
In special education, there's no fund for it, so we're just paying.
Yeah, it's all on the district,
It's all general fund money.
Yeah. okay.
Is this the first time we're doing this?
We do it every year.
We do it every year? I
We
didn't.
do it every year.
It's a combo, special ed and migrant, kind of
Okay.
side by side work together.
For a long time.
I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Is this an improvement?
It's never been like this before.
No, it's never been like this before.
I'm just
Not even
wondering.
close,
Okay.
not even close.
I mean,
Alright.
No.
I mean,
it's just-
I mean, it should get credit, right? Like, if you know that this is an improvement, then
Oh
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh.
You would have had to see the old ones.
Leaps and bounds.
Okay.
and I think,
that's great job.
and I think it all stems back to, like you said, you have a second year teacher who's just a star. You have a director of the programs that's a star. You have secretarial support staff this presentation is hundreds of hours of work from a lot of people. And what is happening with our special education programs is you're hearing from more and more parents, it's working for my child. It's meeting my child's needs, and you're hearing less and less and less. Nobody calls me, nobody works with me, the parent, the school doesn't listen, they're taking away programs, you don't hear that, because we've taken so much care to develop these things. And then one other thing that this group is really good at doing, they're really good at putting themselves out there with the public and saying, we're holding a webinar, call in. 200 parents calling into a webinar, that's extraordinary. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, okay, give it to us. What do we need to do different?
Right.
They don't all just call in and say, we love you and you're the best. They say, why isn't this happening? Why aren't you doing it? Then we go back and fix it.
But see, that's what any good organization should have, that system in place, that 360 evaluation, because it's just not that you're the superintendent. I wanna know what I'm not doing right. I wanna hear from your staff, from other people, where can I improve? We wanna know where we can improve, because that's our job. We're here to be a tool to ensure that our kids get the very best. But am I gonna hit my mark every single time? No, I expect everyone to fail. That should be an expectation, but it's how we help each other through that and be transparent. And the more we can communicate and learn from those mistakes to improve, that's what's gonna make us the better district overall. It's not where you fall, it's how you get up and how you keep going
Make it
forward
better.
and making those improvements and learning from our mistakes, not repeating them over and over.
Well, my grandson's case, it's very complicated because he has so much other resources that we have to deal with. And so his schedule is crazy. And one of his supports, Jen had given the schedule out and then had given it out again. And the special resource came back and put a time in that was during the insurance time. And Jen comes upstairs, wakes me up and says, look at this, and she's just like, so frustrated, you know? And I said, some choice words. And it was like, I felt like we were going back to, instead of doing the, listening to the parent, instead of having the parent do what special ed said, that this is gonna have to happen, like you have to cancel your session with your private insurance, or there's no session with the district. And that's how I felt we were going back. And so later I, sent out an email to Diego, and of course it was corrected right away. But I felt like, okay, we're going back to that, we can't go back to that, And it was taken care of right away. But, everybody, this whole virtual learning and distance learning has caught all of us by surprise. And there's gonna be bumps. There's gonna be bumps, and I think the special ed department has really, all I can talk about is for my grandson, and I just think they've really done a great job. That's all I can say that way, but I think they've done a tremendous job.
The other thing I had to take this off because I'm getting a headache, but
I know.
I'm just not used to having it, and
I feel the same, well,
I started wearing it at 7 this morning, so
Oh, wow.
I'm tapping out, I'm wearing it, but
I was at 8, so I'm right behind you.
I'll cover up, I'll still do it, but the other unsung heroes in developing this summer program and developing, what you're talking about, Jan, is you're talking about the changes happen so fast and they're so unexpected, but yet we had teachers who worked for us like Mahali Magawa and Shannon Parsons, who actually came in from this outset and said, all right, we can't just give the same packet to our children with special needs that everyone else is getting, because we, as a district, we said, we need to get education into the hands of kids, but we were looking at it from a very big level, district-wide.
right,
But they came in from the get-go without my prodding or my instruction to do so and said, it isn't gonna work for children with special needs. So we need to live at this district office until we've prepared everything for these kids. So we know that the students in Mrs. Clifford's class at this school are getting what they need,
Sure.
the kids in Miss Blankenship's class and the kid in Miss Ward's class.
just
And
incredible.
they went classroom by classroom, so I just wanted to finish with that because the structure's in place, but there's also the desire is in place. Because we've created that culture in the district.
I think giving our parents the opportunity of doing those webinars, we did one now, but again, towards the end, to kind of see, how did we do? Did we hit our mark? I think it's important, going into summer, what improvements still need to be made.
We didn't do
There'll be
the
monthly-
general
Yeah.
webinar, right? Cause that one was canceled when we were gonna sign up, and then I've been waiting to hear, right, we haven't done that one.
So we had to cancel that one
Right,
because it was
because
the day that there was a Zoom bombing for the county office of that, and we were very
Yeah.
hesitant to go forward with it. And since then, we've held 2 webinars, one in English and one in Spanish, and the plan is to hold monthly webinars, June, July, and August.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
That was open to everybody?
perfect.
Missed that one.
Yeah.
12C.
12C, Business Learning Program, all right. So tonight's presentation is a look into the future.
Oh. You do have a crystal ball then.
I didn't say I was gonna be right, I just said the technology, we know that internet is not accessible, actually not even just the students, folks, but our staff. Our staff is relying on the district to provide them with internet access in the home and to provide them with devices in the home. So it's not just our students.
Yeah.
And remember, we employ 600 people, so we're talking about big numbers here. And our tech department has been amazing in providing those resources to our staff. Internet access, our district, as I brought up earlier, will have to devote substantial monies to provide children with internet access.
So we can't work collaboratively with our city or county leaders to work on developing something citywide
For
for our
internet access,
community? Yeah,
all it takes is money.
That's a good question.
I mean, versus
Governor took
one entity trying to flip the bill versus bringing in, the county office, our city leaders or county leaders, or, the high school. What can we do to help minimize the cost and provide this benefit for all of our children in this community?
That's very interesting, because in the county supervisor meeting today, they created a committee called the Roadmap to Recovery for, business in the county. And I think we probably need to do that, for this,
We
create
need
that
to, because
partnership.
you can't, it's already gonna make a huge impact on our budget, to do this.
Students are part of the recovery.
Right,
It's an integral part of the recovery,
right.
all the way down the line.
Well, what might come of this, see, all this on one level, I hate, on the other is, I think it's very exciting, because I think distance learning will be here. And if we could get ADA for it, that would just be, even better. But I think what you're talking about is probably treating internet access like water, electricity, sewer.
Right.
And that might be where we're heading, whether we can take a lead on that or not. That's what I say, the mayor would be very interested in talking about this, is how do we create it for
Everyone.
everyone. And
Plus, we have so many rural places, children live, and they still go to our schools, and they need access as well.
And we're right by Silicon Valley, all these
I
tech
know.
peoples live here.
You have all the little schools out there that have to do this. I'm just curious on how they're doing this, with their limitations being out, Willow
I don't
and,
know how they do it.
way in the heck out there.
Jefferson.
They're paying a
Noach,
lot.
There's about,
I've seen it, Jefferson.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Just curious, but
I know that they are, and that could be through the Farm Bureau
okay.
thing, but
I wonder if the ranchers would help,
'Cause
the
you have
farm workers,
Spring
that's their
Grove,
workers.
I-
And
I'm
you know
just-
what, that's a good, so maybe something we could ask the farm worker task
Yeah.
force. It all lasts time.
We gotta think outside of us and
Right,
bringing in other people to help
that's a good
solve
question.
this internet situation that
You know what, I'm gonna bring it up to them.
the whole community needs to be a part of.
And I think we have to figure out how to take advantage of the cost we're already incurring. We're already paying tremendous cost per year for internet connectivity.
Right.
And it's basically designed to allow 6,000 kids and 600 employees to use the internet as much as they like, any day, all year long.
Right.
Well, we don't have kids in school,
Right.
so we're still paying for
For
that
that service.
but we're not using it.
Right.
And we still need to pay for it, because one day this is all gonna be over and we're gonna be back in school. So what I'm thinking is, let's start to connect with our partners around this idea of, let's figure out how to cast these broader nets in highly populated parts of town, that we also don't forget about our rural kids living out in McCloskey and living out in the country and
Right,
out in Fairview, and say, okay, for those families, we use a Wi-Fi hotspot system. So it's really personalized to them. But for the families that live in town, we've got bigger nets being cast.
Don't forget Wright Road in Pendleton.
Mhm.
Right, Road?
One of the things that I read in one of the journals, one of the articles that we get, was they would put a school bus together. Did anybody read that article where they put the school bus and they loaded them up with the internet, so it was an internet hotspot, and it would go into areas that did not have a lot of internet access, and they did it during the times when the kids needed it after school. weekend, that kind of stuff, so the kids could do their work?
We have the same, that's a separate plan that we're putting in place right now. We don't own buses. and
Right.
those are
Right, we don't.
But it's really just the vehicle itself. We do have lots of district vans, so what it would connect with is the idea, okay, so if we can create some pretty big antenna on our school sites, we know it's not gonna cover the whole town. So
Right.
once we figure out what parts of town are not covered, that's where we have our vehicles. And basically you have an employee park the vehicle there overnight.
What do they have? Like they have a special
It's-
Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it's basically
One of these.
really high
Oh, one of
powered
those.
one of those
Mhm.
in a parked vehicle. And then if you live there and you try to open up your Chromebook and it searches for a Wi-Fi signal, that
Yeah,
will
it'll pick that up.
That's crazy.
Now, when you have a school bus, you know, it's not any different than having a van, so we can do the same thing, but, you know, it's also not free, there's a separate cost and a separate fee for that, so what we'll bring to the board is an explanation of, this is how to leverage what we're already paying for, and this is the cost. This is how to bring in a company like Khajiit, like the high school has, and this is the cost. This is how to use AT&T, and this is the cost.
Okay.
And from that point forward, we decide what are we willing to spend and what's the priority for us.
So in your superintendent meetings, have this discussion come up?
I would say that we definitely talked a great deal about all the issues that are facing us, but there's just so much that's personalized to our district. It's really not fair to try to, you know, so many of the other schools are single school districts, so they don't have the complexity of AAA and and this and
Yeah.
this grade level and this and
Right.
migrant students, populations of, 1,000, and
Right.
so we're definitely sharing, but I just think our district is so
Big.
unusual in the county in terms of how it's set up, that it's just harder to maybe share those practices. And I think most school districts are basically going to be able to do it using just Khajiit or using just AT&T, and we'll have to think more creatively in order to meet our students' needs. Plus, we just have a much higher percentage of free and reduced lunch.
Yeah, but there are other school districts, I mean, this is a topic for every single school district
Right.
across
Oh,
the
yeah.
land.
Right, of course.
And there are very large companies who are working on this very problem. It'll be a public partnership. I haven't, I mean, in full disclosure, my company is involved, but we're not there yet. But I have to go back and look, because the one thing that I've not seen anything going back and forth on is the internet access part, but all of this is dependent on it, so some of the geniuses involved are most likely solving that. And I'll, if I find out anything, I'll part it on the board here, but they are racing to figure out everything from the devices to
Access.
well, yeah, and what my role in this is explaining, everybody thinks that there's a lot of liquidity in K through 12 education, meaning, oh, here's the problem, we will fund the solution.
Everybody has
Yeah.
money to pay for it.
And I try to explain to them, right,
No.
It doesn't work that way.
that, 85% of our budget goes towards, human capital.
Yeah.
And our days are very structured, I mean,
Yeah.
and again, the element of you're asking people to teach from their homes, which,
Right. Which already comes with the inherent challenges,
Yeah.
especially if you have your own children, that who's gonna help them? If you're
Not there,
working,
too.
you're working,
Yeah.
teaching other people's children.
but,
That's different.
I'll ask the mayor and I'll ask my county supervisor,
I think it's
about the
a,
likelihood,
yeah.
could we say, as a community,
right,
that we want internet access like we have electricity?
mhm. Well, you have the public library that has all these options, to access all these services via online, but with no library, people would have to have these things at home. Again, you would have so much more, availability to access these different things to your whole community.
Yeah,
If we were able to come together and bring the costs, share within the cost of providing that to everyone.
Absolutely. In terms of our distance learning program, we'll have to expect and plan for the likelihood of having a 50-50 model where we bring students to school Monday and Wednesday, and a separate group of students come to school Tuesday and Thursday, and no one comes to school 5 days a week.
Wow.
Or establish tracks of students, so you have A track, which is Monday, B track, which is Tuesday, C track, which is Wednesday, D on Thursday, and E on Friday. So students are in school 1 day a week.
Wow.
Or we bring everybody back and we implement some pretty intensive medical, or I should say health and social distancing practices. So what we're thinking about in terms of our plan is, if we go with a plan that requires the district to pay for Wi-Fi hotspots, those plans are based on data. So Zoom and Google Meet are no longer good practices to use because they require such a high demand on data. So we'll transition to YouTube with, pre-recorded YouTube lessons with interaction using Google Hangouts, which is more of a, almost like a chat or text-based, with Google Classroom. So when students come to school, they have that face-to-face interaction with the teacher. But the at-home part of it reduces. And the nice thing about some of these Wi-Fi hotspot systems is, Brandon and I were talking about, okay, what we really want is we want kids to go on Zern Math and Eureka Math. We want them on Footsteps of Brilliance. We want them on Google Classroom. We want them on YouTube. We want them on Benchmark Events. And we want them in our ELD NGSS program. So we can actually blacklist all the sites we don't want them on and whitelist all the sites we do want them on.
Right.
Using the program Kajit, you can monitor usage so that you actually turn off the usage.
At a
There's
certain time frame
days
as
and
well.
times.
Yeah,
knock it off on the weekends,
yeah.
turn it on at 8 a.m., turn it back off at 5 p.m.
A lot of control.
We
Why
don't,
would you turn it off on weekend?
because we want the data to be used for
Okay.
classroom instruction.
Okay.
And we also don't want a bunch of screenagers coming back to school in 2022 who've been stuck to our computers.
I think you already got that.
Well, I just don't, I mean, that's a very,
Yes.
look at the research on children who spend too much time on their devices.
They have to now, they're
It's
like,
horrible research.
I know.
So we have to figure out a way
Yeah.
where we don't just put everything on, use this computer screen.
But that's gonna be so hard because parents have to go to work. Who's gonna stay home with the children? If you've got them
I
only
think
going to
most
school 1
society-
day a week or 2 days a week, they're home the other 3 days with who?
And we'll in our district, all recommend to the board that we have children at school the maximum amount allowable. If there's some demand that we not allow children to come to school, then we'll resort to one of those other options. But my preference will always be to have all the children at school.
Oh, because you have the after-school programs coming in, you know, because you had some of our parents not being able to pick them up till 6 o'clock or how do, I know things are not gonna be normal for a while, but if this is lifted and parents have to go back to work to make, provide for their families, how, I know all districts are gonna have to figure this out, but how do we do this in a mindful way to know all of these demands on parents and their time and being home? And the kids that can't have their parent, if a farm worker doesn't go to work, they don't get paid.
They lose their job.
I don't know we're gonna do this.
What would happen, I know in the old days, when, in fact, it was done in this district, I think 1 year, when you're really, really overcrowded, you would have the kids, one section of kids go 3 hours in the morning, they go home, and then in the afternoon, the other half.
Like kinder used to do?
In a way, yeah. And so what you could do is the ones that were here in the morning, for the afternoon, you would have these tech lessons for them. And then reverse, the ones that are going in the afternoon would have the tech lessons, and then they would be at school in the afternoon. I know that's logistically really difficult, but you would be giving them a full day, as best you could, of class each day, and you'd be actually able to cover each subject each day. I don't know, it sounds, it's just a thought,
Hey,
just a
oh,
thought.
there's all kinds of thoughts on here.
Yeah. One thing I wanna make sure that the board is aware of is that we're already planning for each of these scenarios. So I have teams of administrators who will meet with me each of the next 3 weeks, an hour and a half at a time, to develop a plan for a return to school with all 6,000 students with mandatory social distancing. So starting next week, myself and Monique Ruiz and Aggie Obeso Bradley and Caroline Calera will meet at 2 of our schools to begin to identify if we had to have all the children back at this school, and we were told that children had to wear face coverings and that we had to have the ability for children to wash their hands once every 3 hours, every child in the school, where would it happen? If we had to have a custodian wiping down every surface on campus, a minimum of once every hour, how would we?
Oh my gosh.
So basically, our system right now, we have 1 daytime custodian and 2 nighttime custodians, so
Yeah.
it would flip.
Yeah,
We'd have 2 daytime custodians. One,
everybody would have to be in the day. I don't see how you could have anybody.
well, you'd have to
at
bring
night.
that last person in probably around 11 o'clock so that they could hit the lunch, so that person would just be at the lunch table.
Yeah,
So that's happening, and then I have a different group, Janine Ostoya, Ken Woods, and Dana Herbst are meeting with me to talk about a hybrid model to plan, and the reason I'm doing it this way is that if you get too many voices in the same room, the meetings will
You can
drag
never-
on
you
for.
can
Forever.
never
That's
plan on
right.
anything.
So I'm putting these people in small teams, and then the last team is completely online instruction. Media, Scott Wilbur, myself, Kip Ward, completely online. If they said the public risk is too high, we don't want anyone on campus, we don't want teachers on campus, we don't want staff on campus, we don't want kids on campus, we have to be prepared to go completely online. So what we're doing is we're putting all of the plans in place, like things like this. So we're talking about for technology, we have 1,500 Chromebooks that are 5 years or older. They're not gonna last us forever.
Right.
So we have to buy new Chromebooks, and Chromebooks are expensive. They're $300 a pop.
Wow.
So if we purchased 1,500 new Chromebooks this year, then that's a big cost that we have to incur, and we have to prepare for that.
Yeah.
Is that essential? Right now, yes. Right now, like you said, it's the only way they're getting their education.
Right.
The curriculum logistics, we have 2 extremely high quality curriculums in the district. One is Eureka Math and the other is Benchmark Advanced. Both of those programs are fully integrated online, and we are working right now to provide children with the hands-on manipulatives, because the programs won't truly give us the results we want if the kids don't have the manipulatives at home that they can work on. So we're planning to give kids these little tubs that live in their home next year as soon as we need it, and within a day, we'll have the tubs in their homes, so that when they're doing the Eureka Math lessons, they have that in their house. The workbooks, We're not gonna be reproducing 6,000 packets every week. Every child's gonna get a workbook with all the materials in there for the remainder, because it could go on for 6 weeks or 12 weeks or 18 weeks. Right now, we're spending a lot of time and energy producing these things. Next year, we're gonna go fully integrated, workbook for every child, manipulators for every child, online access for every child. And that's,
School's gonna change forever, huh?
next year will be a very,
Until there's a vaccine.
I mean,
yeah.
there's never been a
I mean, this
year
is gonna
like
impact
what
these
happened.
kids for a while.
Till there's a vaccine, yeah.
Well, and everything else, right? Let alone the health concern,
The other-
everything that they went through.
The other part of it is we're adopting curriculum that will allow us to monitor students, because the other thing that's happening and you're reading about in the newspaper and online is you're reading about school districts that are saying 42% of our kids haven't logged in.
Yeah, LA Unified.
31,000 kids in Stockton Unified haven't attended their little
Vacation.
classrooms. And maybe this is just Hollister, an example of Smallister, an example of a good community, but our numbers are really high.
What are they?
Our percentages, I'll give it to you at the main meeting, because I wanna have it school by school, but the numbers are extremely promising in terms of numbers of kids that we are reaching and we're connecting with and we're teaching and are in the Google meetings. As you know, my child goes to school in this district. When his teacher does a classroom Zoom meeting, every single child in the class is there. And that school also has 42% free and reduced lunch students attending, so it's not all high-income families. In addition, his teacher will do small group instruction, so she'll say, I wanna see Teddy and his 3 classmates at this time. So you have a special meeting with me tomorrow at this time, and it's just 4 kids. So we're not only making contact, we're delivering small group instruction with kids district-wide. The training for next year for teachers will focus on how to integrate YouTube lessons, how to use best practices with Google Classroom, so that, let's say we're still physically distanced from kids next year. We want the email about the Google Classroom assignment to go to the parent and the student. There's a way to do that. We'll teach teachers how to set that up. We haven't done that this spring because we're just making it. We're doing everything we can. We can't do it all.
Yeah.
But by fall, we will have a thorough training for teachers on Google Classroom, a thorough training for teachers on developing pre-recorded YouTube lessons that span across the whole district, and then training on establishing two-way communication with parents. Not just, here's the email, but I wanna hear back from you. What do you need? What has changed in the last,
Well, Charlie's teacher always, before she ends the lesson, she asks, now, does anybody need anything from me? Does anybody have any questions for me? She always ends her lesson asking, is there anything that anybody needs? This is her second year teaching.
I know, it's smart, I mean, that's a great way to
Yeah,
do the
Is
lesson.
Blankenship?
Checking your
Jenny goes,
understanding,
is-
you're doing a lot of things.
Is she gonna be Charlie's teacher next year?
well, I was just about to say, what happens is parents with teachers like that, they go, can you just move to second grade?
That's what Tyler played all the time.
Will you move? Thank you, folks.
12D.
12D, coronavirus-related costs. Some really substantial costs. Devices, internet access, materials, teacher training, cybersecurity, online counseling, and daily sanitizing of campus. So we talked about why we need devices, and here's the cost for those devices.
Can I ask a question about the sanitation part?
Mhm.
You know, can't kids wash their own desks?
should.
Um,
I think it would be nice practice.
Well, it's like,
Just soak the water and a
Well-
paper towel.
It's the chemicals that we're talking about and the
Yeah.
training that has to go behind it,
They have to do the,
that our
Well,
custodian staff.
technically, all they really need to do is use alcohol. I mean, honestly, a little spray bottle of
the
alcohol.
problem is if you're in charge of 25 5-year-olds,
That would be
I'm
tough.
saying age level, let's say
Yeah.
they're fourth grade.
yeah.
Fourth grade, not, can't they wipe their desks?
I don't know, Jen, I would have to ask, and but I don't think I would want them to, because I don't, well, one is I want it done properly. You know, have you seen
Yeah,
some,
I can guarantee a 5-year-old.
the penmanship some of these boys have? You know, I just think
They're washing their hands.
and the desks are not, those are not the height, that's actually a somewhat low touch area.
Mm-hmm.
The high touch areas are the entrances and exits of each classroom.
Your handles,
And
yeah,
all of the high touch
bathrooms.
areas on campus, the water fountains, the restrooms, the
Right.
toilets, the sinks, the handles, right?
Your
The
Chromebooks, if you're
benches.
using them, yeah.
And
Your
so
pen at the sign-in table.
The
or your-
posts in front of the school, watch when
Really?
children go to school, just watch when children go to school, what do your kids do?
Mm-hmm.
They want to
Yeah, yeah,
every
touch
ball,
everything.
they'll touch everything and.
Well, even when they're getting their food, are they punching in their number?
No,
So-
no, because we're a community
don't do that no
outbuilding
more.
Okay,
provision.
the high school still does.
They don't do that
So,
anymore.
and every student has to use the same little keypad to punch in their number.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
gonna have to go away,
That will
yeah.
have to change.
like, you know, but I wasn't sure how we did it, you know.
So high touch areas are what we're
Mhm.
talking
High touch areas. High touch areas, but it really, there's a cost that goes along with it, because
Mhm,
one thing we'll
Every
talk about
single
doing
day.
is changing what we do, but there are some things that we just have to pay for. Computers are one of those things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
We have to purchase computers. Here's the other thing, so in my household, when my child's on his class, I don't have it playing out loud, he's wearing a headset so he can focus. But it's also because I have a 3-year-old, and I don't want the 3-year-old yelling out something she heard on his class. And I don't want him hearing that the news playing in the background and the outside noises. So we have to provide our children with headsets as well, in order to equalize things
Mm-hmm.
for these children. Not to mention, we're running classes at the same time. We have families, over 1,000 families that have siblings in our district.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
that might
how are
limit-
they supposed to do that? And they're sitting there and their things playing and they're talking.
Right.
You know, have you tried to hold a Zoom with somebody standing right next to you? It's not very much fun.
Yes,
Much less somebody who's 7 years old,
yes,
or 10, or 12.
yes.
So we just have to factor in a little bit of that cost. And then the set of manipulatives for each child. Right now, what we do is we buy manipulatives for classrooms, and teachers will basically create small group instruction areas but it's gonna cost more in order to buy it for each child. We won't have to buy a whole class set for each child, but we'll have to basically purchase the materials in bulk and then create tabs for each child to take.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 5,500 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
On the headsets, are we buying them for all of our kids?
Yes.
That's good.
And what we'll do is, in order to save money, is we'll do the same surveying process so that families that can afford it and that have children who already have headsets, we won't buy it for them.
Okay.
So that cost is if we had to do it for every child. If it comes in less, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I'll be really happy,
No, of course.
right? Because we, obviously we want service to children. We don't wanna buy things we don't need.
Right.
Is there any, I see this 570, is there any, when we're doing it this way, is there money that we're saving at the schools because the kids aren't there? That might offset this a little bit? Do we have any savings that way, or have we looked into that? How do we know we may not have to pay as much?
Or like utilities.
If you're, yeah, like you're, exactly.
Yeah, do we still have to pay that
would be one.
big bill, PG&E?
I mean, well, that's one example, but I mean, I'm sure there's other examples as well. Have we thought about how we can offset some of this cost?
Campus security.
That's a good question.
There are very few things we don't have to pay for.
Really?
and sadly. So one example of something we don't have to pay for are contracted services. But here's the catch-22. So right now we have a contracted service for transportation, and it's substantial. It's $75,000 a month. If we don't pay that contracted service, then who is going to drive our kids next year when we do need that bus?
Yeah.
So the negotiator in me says, tell them I'll pay 10% to keep some skin in the game. Because they have to understand I'm taking on a lot of costs.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not swimming in money. This thing's costing us more money than we're bringing in. But if they choose not to reinstitute business with us next year, we have to find somebody to bring our children to school. And so it's a catch-22, because if you don't pay for that service, so the same thing goes with the contractors that come and give special education service. Right now, we transport kids to a non-public school
Right.
outside of the county.
Right.
And, you know, that company wants us to pay them their $4,800 per month for the vehicle service. Well, the child's not going to school.
Right.
Well, they still want to be paid. Okay, great. How am I gonna get that child there in August when school resumes? If that was the only company that could take the child. I mean, there are districts that end up paying taxis to take kids to school. I've seen that happen,
Wow.
because you have to provide the service.
Oh, yeah.
So unfortunately, Steve, the vast majority of things, and Rob mentioned it earlier, obviously there's salary and benefits. And then on top of that, even the contracted services we have, we're still somewhat tied to the idea of at least paying some portion of the fee. And then in terms of the cost for heating and air and lights, the day this happened, we went in and turned off the chillers, we turned off all of the site lights and heating and air, but now we're bringing staff back, because we have to start registration, we have to start summer school, we have to allow teachers to come back on campus, empty out their rooms, put student materials that are in their desks in bags, and do this whole new process of getting families the things from school. So we have to turn those air conditioners back on now, because we can't subject our employees to being in a classroom. I know this is Hollister and today was supposed to be a hot day, but it was actually hot out there. So, you know, we had employees saying, hey, turn the air back on because we're here, and you know, we can't just let the breeze in, it's really hot today. So even some of those savings are being mitigated by the time of year that this is happening.
So, do we have this in the big picture, what this means for the district's finances overall? I mean, our true measurement is what the reserves levels are, right?
Right.
Are we scraping bottom?
No, one of the things that we're doing is we're still being very conservative in our projections for growth and our projections for ADA. We don't really even know how ADA will work in the future, but we're not planning on getting more money. We're not building in, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know.
No, we don't need portables.
Yeah, well, Hail Mary fund, we're not planning for those things, Carla, because we don't know if that's gonna happen. So what this does is, I'm flagging to the school board. I need the public and the school board to understand the costs of this are substantial. They are not minimal expenses. So it means we'll have to spend less elsewhere in order to pay for these things. And I would not recommend a plan to the board that said, oh, let's spend another $2 million, unless I could show the board how to
Recoup it or
reduce
fund it?
revenue and recuperate revenue elsewhere.
Yeah, it's not possible right now.
Internet access, in this presentation, what I'm showing is if we went with an annual service contract through Spectrum, one of our local providers, to provide internet access to only the most needy, low-income families who are either special ed or migrant, foster, homeless, migrant, and special ed, it's $325,000 for the year.
Wow.
It's a substantial cost for the year. So, do I think that we can budget for that and find the savings for that? Absolutely. Absolutely we can. but it isn't gonna come without making some shrewd and good decisions for children. But I wanna continue to bring more that. Think about the family whose parent is out of work because you have a child telling her mother, I haven't been in any of my classes. My teacher's teaching the class today. They called us today, the class is today, begging the parent, please let me attend the class.
Yeah.
So the parent misses work and is fired for missing work 2 days a week. Those are the stakes we're talking about, folks. So when it comes to something like that, then yeah, I'm not dropping the new portable, I'm not buying that new device or this new thing because I need to equalize the playing field for our children. And who knows, maybe this is only a 1-year thing and we find the savings. Maybe we develop a plan that's a year-by-year savings plan to be able to pay for this. But what we're doing today, April 28th, is we're publicly putting this out there so that the school board and members of our community know that the costs of coronavirus are really, really substantial.
Yeah, well, we have to have a plan. I mean, I personally think that things will be more normal next school year than they're not, just because the way our society is set up with the dual income households and the fact that you really can't, unless there's heroic efforts, get internet access and stuff, and the whole learning paradigm changes. And I mean, again, with the backdrop, just my personal opinion, that you know, what we've seen with all the data and stuff like that is this is not the plague. It is something that we might be able to mitigate sooner than we think, because you know, I don't see doing, I mean, I've heard the rumor, or not rumors, but you know, well, school open, but there'll be 6-foot distancing and stuff like that. Well, you don't have the physical space for that, you know, and again, mom and dad eventually will have to get to work, and even if they're working from home, they can't work from home and be babysitting their kids. So it's all very interesting, but we have to do this planning. It's the contingency plan. And it's, you know, I'm very glad to see you thinking about it. I still think at some point, if we get too far into this, you know, you might have to consider, do we need a principle of online learning just to manage everything that you put in this section? But
One thing
focused attention, I guess.
One thing we won't know until the science and the political and the economic and I would say also just the maybe even almost cultural or spiritual components all come together this summer is, will parents want to send their children back to school if there's no
Right.
vaccine?
Alternatives.
There's no vaccine.
That's why the principle of
mitigation
online
measures
learning
Or
comes in play.
alternatives, right, options.
Yeah.
And that's, so we're factoring in currently, we met with our teacher union last night and we prepared the opening of a minimum of 3 independent study teacher positions and as many as 7 to begin with to start the year, with a recommended caseload of 35 kids per teacher. And what that would do is it would allow as many as 200 children to start the year fully online through independent study.
Okay.
And it might be more than that.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get to that threshold until the first week in July, so that we can balance maybe the optimism and the hope that, you know, I'm definitely crossing my fingers and praying and hoping that things get better and that cases go down and that our community opens up. And if that happens, then maybe we don't have 200 families, maybe it's 80 or maybe it's 50.
Right.
But we're preparing for that as well.
Right.
Right now.
We should,
They should.
TK through 8th grade, we're preparing for that right now.
that's good.
You know, San Benito County has done a very good job, I think, of keeping the coronavirus at a minimum.
We're
I
really
just watched,
Zero on Friday.
47 people have gotten it, or
Yeah.
We have 15 today.
and 42 have resolved and 2
Yeah.
died, well,
The
okay.
numbers are, I think the.
And there's only
fewer.
like 3 people that are actually still
Yeah.
infectious.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for
It's-
50,000 or
I
however
think
many
it's
you're in
really
San
good.
Diego County. I'm
Props to everybody.
very happy about
We have
that.
60,000.
I think
60,000, there you
everybody
go.
has done their part.
They've done that.
Families,
Yeah, businesses, I mean,
businesses.
we're in it together.
One of the things that I will recommend to the board going into next year is that we increase the district technology specialist staffing, because what we're now, we have positions in the district that are site tech specialists.
Right.
And then we've had a position for district tech specialists, and over the last several years, we've attempted to hire new site tech specialists and haven't been successful. We haven't had people hire on in that position and stay with us. So
Is it due to our pay?
I think
Probably.
I think it's the wrong pay, but I also just think people aren't joining in the technology department even for those duties anymore. I think we have to start scaling up the positions and going, okay, let's get you this training and now you're a district technology specialist. So now Brandon can use that person's skill set to do more duties that affect all schools.
Yeah.
And not simply one or two schools.
Right.
And use it, because right now the system is set up where it's user-based support in school. So it's,
Right,
I'll be there tomorrow, I'll be right, I'll send you the fix on this.
right,
Now it's, you need to be tied to one of these, tied to a computer
Yeah.
and doing videos
right,
that you embed in your email so that you're not explaining yourself 50 times in the same day. When Mr. Bernowski sends you the email that his kid can't log into the Wi-Fi, you send them a video that explains how to fix it.
right.
If that doesn't work, then I'll talk to you. But I wanna make sure I'm helping as many families as quickly as I can. And that's different than, let me walk over and help you set up your lesson on your computer. So much of the program's working, but it's an additional cost
Right.
that we'll have to incur. Who knows what a high heat pressure washer is? It's one of my favorite tools as a school principal. I love the.
Oh, the pressure washer?
Yeah, but
You
I
get
also-
Like the high
So
heat,
then-
the high
Oh,
Yeah,
is there
the ones
another
with
one
the
I don't
heat.
know of?
There's one with,
As a
yeah,
principal, I always had the
the
brand.
high
we
heat,
use this
just takes everything
called
off.
hot seat.
Oh,
The hot seat, you take it down,
yeah?
your concrete at a school will go
I would love to borrow that.
from dark to
To white.
pristine, beautiful. Oh yeah.
Restaurant's best friend.
Yes, but you have to it has to be high heat because we have to sanitize. You don't wanna send staff out there with a rag, and you wanna use their time. So you wanna say, okay, this is how we're doing it, so that those machines are expensive. At the same time, the
They're
amount
worth
of
every
money
time.
we're gonna need
Yeah.
to spend for face coverings and
Yeah.
for Clorox wipes is gonna be really substantial per school, per year, setting those up. Because the costs are coming. If we open up, we're gonna incur a lot of costs to keep our campuses safe. If we keep kids home, we're gonna incur a lot of costs to give them school.
That doesn't matter.
What I'm trying to tell the board is you're going to pay one way
Oh,
or the
yeah,
other.
one with.
It's just a matter of, are you paying
Forgot,
Johnson and
forgot.
Johnson for their products, or are you paying, Google?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's very, very substantial cost that
Yeah.
goes into it.
Took me down memory lane on this, with the Prop 78, or Prop 13, and in 1978, going down memory lane here.
Folks. So that's my presentation, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next agenda item is to hold a public hearing on the adoption of, what is it, Eureka Math? Yes. So how do we do this? So are you doing a presentation on this?
We're not doing a presentation, so what you do on this item is you basically, I have a backup document for it. And basically what you do is you have, we identify the time and we gavel in that we're holding a public hearing on adoption. You read the item title, you open the public hearing, you wait for any public comment regarding the adoption of Eureka materials. Seeing no public comment on the public hearing regarding the adoption, You gavel closed, and we move on to the agenda.
All right, the next item on the agenda is to open up a hearing. It's a public hearing on adoption of Eureka Math instructional materials for mathematics, grades K through 8. The hearing is now open at 8:04 p.m.
Is there any public comment?
No phone calls?
Hearing no public comment, I'm going to close the hearing
At 8:05.
at 8:05. 14A, approval of a resolution, number 28/1920, to adopt K through 8 math materials, instructional materials for the 2021 school year. It's recommended by the administration that the Board of Trustees approve Resolution 28/19-20 to adopt, to adopt the K through 8 math materials, instructional materials for the 2021 school year.
And so the administration is strongly recommending that we adopt these materials. We implemented Eureka Math for all schools except Rancho San Justo and Mays Middle School for this year. Because we operate K through 8 at Gavilan Hills HDLA, Calaveras, and 4 through 8 at AAA, we were able to use the materials for students that span the whole district. And the results have been extremely strong. The program is one of the most highly regarded programs in the country. It's fully integrated online. The training is top-notch, and over 175 teachers implemented this curriculum this year. So our recommendation to the board is that we make it an adopted curriculum for the district, and that we do it basically on a year-to-year basis, because the curriculum itself is designed in a way where every year the child takes home the consumable. So on a year-to-year basis, we'll determine how many materials to buy, what grade levels, and instead of doing, an 8-year agreement, we do a series of 1-year agreements.
Well, personally, what I would like to see, if you're gonna have, math is not one of our top areas traditionally. What I like the most about this is the very concept is every single student in the district will be on the same program. So if they've started in kindergarten, by the time they get to the 8th grade, they're familiar, obviously, with the program. To me, it also would be easier, a lot easier, to evaluate its effectiveness if every single teacher is teaching math, Eureka Math. To me, it makes common sense. To have one group doing this and another group doing this, it's impossible to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And being a quality program, as you say, I don't see what's wrong with everybody teaching Eureka Math, being on the same page.
And I'm glad you brought that up too, because that accounts for a lot of the variability in the district.
Yeah.
Because we actually had schools that had grade levels that were using different curriculum last year. So we would
That's my
even
point.
forget like Sarah Vista versus Lad Lane. I mean, I'm talking about
4th
20
grade.
feet away,
Yeah.
they're using a different curriculum than we're using in this
Over
classroom.
Interesting.
What that causes for children is huge gaps.
Gaps, yeah.
Okay, this program highlights and focuses this. Okay, well, my new teacher doesn't teach that, my new teacher teaches. And so when this came about, it was somewhat, I think, unexpected that the district would agree to pilot it this year, because we spent more than $100,000 to get it off the ground. It's very expensive. We spent that money last year to get the curriculum off the ground. We had to pay to have all of our teachers trained, 175 teachers trained to use the curriculum. So it was very expensive to get it started. But what we created by doing that is we created a whole community of teachers helping each other and learning how to use this
Familiar
curriculum.
with the program.
So when I made visits this year, I would schedule visits so that I would visit 3 schools in one day. And I would choose the same grade level. And it was incredible to see across the district, different schools, teachers within a day of themselves teaching the Eureka math. The other reason we really like it is because it really accentuates the use of language. Like we talked about earlier, in order for the district to improve for all of our English learners, we have to teach them language in every class. And Eureka Math is built around this concept of the story of the unit. Every math unit is connected through a story that takes them through, and they talk to each other, they interact with each other. With the teachers teaching Eureka Math, it goes against the idea of a teacher showing 10 examples and the students copying them. It's completely flipped. It's the teacher guiding the students through showing how their math thinking, their math decision-making shows up on a piece of paper. So it's been a really great program to see put in, and tonight I'm asking.
It also is more aligned with the state test, the way they're testing.
Highly.
It just to me, it's a no-brainer.
So 7th and 8th grade will be doing this next year,
All grades,
all grades,
kindergarten through eighth.
This is exactly what you need.
good.
One program throughout the whole school district.
Well, it's the only way we're gonna be able to see how the children are growing.
Yep.
It's the only way we're gonna.
And you can evaluate the program at the same time.
Right.
You're not having all this different things being taught.
Hodgepodge of different things that are designed for different reasons, and, there's gotta be, something that is established. If you could establish it for our neediest children, you can develop it and work within that structure to make it for even our high-performing. You can build something like that, and if
it's an excellent program.
this is what it is,
Yeah.
then this is what we need.
You're not leaving. I had my son go over this. He has a degree in advanced mathematics. Really likes this program.
That's awesome.
Really likes this program.
That is awesome. For someone who is in math and that lives and breathes
Yeah,
math and loves math,
Right.
So the Zern math will help the K through 5 kiddos, and then you said in about 6 months, it'll be able to help the 6th through 8th.
So the reason we're using the free version and the district-wide version of Zern, and I should say Zern is separate from
this.
Right,
Yeah.
I understand that.
The reason why we're using that is because it provides the additional outside Saturday summer support for all of our migrants.
Mhm.
But it'll be
But
available.
It's when you go on the Zern website at your house tonight, it completely matches alongside Eureka Math. It's designed, they call it Engage New York or Engage NY. It completely aligns to Eureka.
Okay.
That's good.
So the
Okay.
same
So it's not
concept.
something different that they're learning and then trying to understand Eureka.
So when the parents are trying to figure things out, they can use the Zern, that's where I'm going.
They can also
Yeah,
use-
because those parents are not teaching
They
Eureka
can also-
Math.
They can also use Eureka. Eureka is also,
Let me tell you.
We need to learn Eureka Math. I'm like, I don't know, is she? Ask your teacher.
I was asking for a friend.
Thank
You have to wait 6 or 8 months.
Oh my God.
Well, your
So
little
this
one.
is an approval?
It is definitely, higher level thinking skills, this is what it's teaching them. And how to acquire them as they get older. It's an excellent program.
So I will entertain a motion to adopt this resolution. If someone wants to do that, please state the resolution.
I will make a motion that we approve resolution number 2819-20 to adopt K through 8 math material and instructional materials for 2020-2021 school year.
I'll second.
Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. All right, discussion action items. 14B. Resolution 19-20, elimination and or reduction of classified employee services. The recommended motion is the administration recommends that the board approve this resolution. Diego. Oh, I'm sorry.
We were able to keep it
Mrs.
under 10,
Sanchez.
so we have Ms. Sanchez.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board. I come before you today with Resolution 1920, which is titled Elimination and or Reduction of Classified Employee Services pursuant to Ed Code Sections 45114 and 45308. At this time, the administrative team, along with members of senior management, have identified a list of staff that we have determined to be part of this recommended resolution to the board for consideration to be eliminated tonight. Due to a lack of work or lack of funds, the total cost savings to the district would be $850,000 at this time. The positions that are to be considered for vote tonight for elimination are found on the first page of the resolution. And the lists include the receptionist, where it says 1.0, that means that is equivalent to one full-time 8-hour employee. There's a migrant education preschool specialist, that's a part-time position. The instructional assistant that works alongside the migrant preschool specialist in that classroom, also a part-time position. We have a program called Extensions. At this time, Extensions is exceeding the revenue that it is bringing in, so it is a program that is not generating revenue, unfortunately. So there is a extensions para-educator, and there are several site lead extensions para-educators that work with that program. We also have instructional assistants. The long titles, those are the job titles, but the job classification is an instructional assistant. We have several of those, the equivalent to 14.5 full-time employees. And we have additional staff that we've identified with the job classification, but that are also instructional assistants, and they're listed as number 7 there. Instructional assistant, bilingual RSP. Those are simply, or those are instructional assistants with that particular job title.
Were all these positions, can we ask questions?
Yes, one thing I would like to add, before we move on, is that these positions are in general education settings and do not include anybody assigned or any positions assigned to special education or RSP or any service such as that. I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Are these filled positions currently? All of them?
Yes, those are current positions, and they represent, staff. The process would be, the classified bargaining unit is aware that should the board approve the resolution tonight, then what that will do is that I will meet with staff alongside a union representative to let them know of the board resolution, give them a copy of the education codes that apply, and also to let them know whether or not they have displacement rights, whether they're able to bump into a position, and whether or not, they want to consider applying for unemployment. That information would be provided to them at that time as well. And any type of questions that they may have, they would direct them to me. Prior to those face-to-face individual meetings, we're working together to ensure that we have the most accurate list for seniority data so that staff will have the ability to review their own record and determine if they have any questions in regards to any of their hire dates and such, so that we can move forward with any funding that may take place.
Well, I have more of a comment. Nobody really, obviously doesn't, you don't wanna make cuts. But I don't know whether you or Diego, but I have to compliment you on diversifying the cuts. It wasn't just concentrated in one area. In the past, speaking from experience, that has not always been the case. And I can tell a lot of thought went into this. When I'm looking at this, not that any of these people are not necessary for the school district, but classes still can go on, from what I see here. Not that they'll be as easy for the teachers, obviously, but unfortunately, we're in a position now where we need, as we just mentioned earlier, we need to make some cuts. And when your budget is 85% personnel, you just have nowhere else to go, especially when some of these other costs are, you can't really not have them. So I just want to make a comment that, as I said, this was well thought out. So my compliments to whoever did this.
Number 6, on the instructional assistant, general non-bilingual RSP. 9 of those positions are going to be from the PE aides, correct?
Okay.
Which was, to me, an unsafe and not a tenable position that we were in to begin with.
You're talking about the 100 kids per
Yes. That was just not a safe situation that we were placing the teacher or the aide in. It had to stop. It had to stop. And I hope that we work with HESTA and come up with a better situation so that the children are not 100 kids out at a time.
Absolutely.
Because the situation is not tenable and totally unsafe. And I'm sorry that, I never like to see positions lost, but the situation that the schools were in, I did not approve of. And I have spoken about that many times at the bargaining table and as a board member. So, that's one of the reasons though that I can accept this, because I didn't believe in what we were doing. So,
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the current situation resolves itself quickly. You know, I'm also hopeful that if it doesn't, you know, one of the things you see in the industry is that a great deal of people will be working from home. I mean, I highly doubt that I will be going to my office 5 days a week. I get 3 hours back a day, you know, and I use my neighbors across the street as an example that they commute their kids up to San Jose every day. And it's very possible that if I'm a typical person and they're a typical person, that maybe our enrollment will actually go up as a result of this. Because that's always been our theory. We've never been able to validate it. But our theory is we have leakage because parents want to take their kids up to there. So I'm hoping that we get some of these back. I mean, it's with a heavy heart. I mean, I don't want to reduce our staff after some of the stuff that we've improved around here. So unfortunately, you know, I'm going to vote for this because I think we have no choice at this point. But I'm hopeful we'll recover. We did from the 2008, 2009.
well, I
So
thought it's a lot sooner.
I feel the same, like when I saw this, I initially, it was like, you know, these are people,
Right,
you know, these are all people, part-time,
who
full-time.
worked very hard for us.
So regardless of, you know, I hope they know that This is so difficult, but you guys do the best you can.
At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
I will as soon as I can turn the page.
Okay.
I'll motion to approve resolution 19-20, elimination and or reduction of classified employee services. Education Code section 45.114 and 45.308.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, 14, D.
it. C.
C, sorry, yeah.
We're still good.
Okay. So,
This is resolution number 30-19-20, elimination and or reduction of classified employee management services. The administration recommends that the board approve resolution number 30:19-20. Ms. Sanchez.
so along, similar lines here. Item number 14C is the resolution number 30/19-20 to eliminate and or reduce the classified employee management service. In particular, this resolution applies to the manager of maintenance and operations. And the reason that we've identified this position and are bringing it forward tonight for recommendation to be eliminated is, again, due to lack of work or lack of funding. The fiscal impact to the district is $110,000. The position itself is held by one full-time employee, so this would impact this employee. But again, it is due to lack of work or lack of funding. Some of the board was part of the board of trustees when we first brought this position some years back, and that was funded by categorical Prop 39 funding. It is my understanding that at this time we do not have that fund anymore. And moving forward, this is one of those positions that we've identified that we can no longer sustain due to that as one of the reasons as well. So this resolution would allow for the district to lay off this employee and move forward with this cost not part of the budget, basically.
Cost savings.
Can I ask something? Assuming we approve this, who takes over what this person does? I mean, how is the job divided out? I mean, obviously they were doing something. What happens?
So
How is that done?
good question. The director of that department would have to absorb as many of the duties as possible. The manager had been employed to work on the day-to-day tasks of managing and working with staff. The director, since he was hired, has been participating in the day-to-day meetings with the staff and the employees in that department and is knowledgeable as to what tasks are pending. So more of his focus will be on the day-to-day operations in addition to the completion of building the new school.
Okay, so.
Mr. Bezzetta.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
But
I just needed to know.
I do wanna say that department has some extremely experienced staff members. We are not talking about new staff members that are related. These men are highly trained, and I mean, their clock is always going. They know it's the first week in May, this is what we do the first week in May, so it's already all there.
okay.
Yeah, I think for them, I think their, the leadership with Mr. Bezzetta and your leadership, it's just a matter of knowing, their parameters you know, and projects. And if, to expedite things, you know, cause I know back in the day, we used to have the goldenrod and the whole process, you know, when we were looking at, you know, when we had to purchase something, it had to go through all these things and checks and balances, so you wanna expedite certain things so you know, okay, I don't wanna wait, you know, 5 days for whether I can get a tool that costs $150. If you know, and your guys know within your, you know, your department, you need approval for this amount or higher. You come to me, you know, and then I go up the chain. So, but as far as expediting and projects, you already know whether we have it and already you know, scheduling it out in their calendar that they always put up in their, you know, in their office, and they know, like you said, they're extremely experienced. They're just ready to go to work, and whatever projects you have for them, I mean, they're just chomping at the bit, what needs to get done and planned out. And with Mr. Mazzetta, he's very, you know, he's very minded as far as, you know,
Confident.
knowing how the system needs to be and built to where he knows he can rely on his guys. I think that's what, the important part of knowing his guys and knowing their capacity and how much he can, you know, pretty much, you know, with Abel, you can't go wrong, yeah. So it's just a matter of looking, you know, if he retires, who the next person in line would be, but, you know, as far as that department, yeah, you're right, they're solid, and they all are veterans and know what needs to get done. And they're here to save the district money in whatever capacity they can, which I think
That
is,
eases me in my mind though.
yeah.
Well, I think since we've lost the funding of 39, that, I'll make a motion that we, approve, resolution 3019-20, elimination of classified employee management service.
I'll second that.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Erica.
Item 14D is a presentation regarding the LCAP, the timeline, goals, and key actions, and I want to preface this by saying that the LCAP process is one that you really should never not be doing the LCAP. You should always be either getting feedback from families or presenting about it to families or meeting with staff about it or planning and checking the data pertaining to the LCAP. And so we started, if you remember, way back in early November with our LCAP process. But I know that many districts were months behind us. So when coronavirus hit in February and then really got intense in March, many districts were just in the process of getting their LCAPs
Together,
community input started. So
and we were done.
we were done with the whole community input portion of it by March. So what that has basically done is the governor put out new guidance this week that basically says, with the LCAP, this was the first year that we were going to adopt a new 3-year LCAP.
Right.
In addition to that, they created a new LCAP template that we were already using. We'd already uploaded it, we were already entering all the information. What the governor had to decide to do was, do I tell districts, stop and don't do anything more with the LCAP, focus on coronavirus? Or do I say, you have 6 months more and finish your LCAP in 6 months, you know, once you get through the haze of this? Or would he say, finish your LCAP? Engage parents through Zoom, engage parents through email, engage parents through surveys. Unfortunately, the superintendent of public instruction and the governor chose kind of a Frankenstein model, so here's what they decided. We're supposed to give an annual update every year in June. They've taken away that responsibility. So for whatever reason, they're not requiring us to report how we did last year on our LCAP goals. that doesn't make sense to me as an educator, but okay. The second thing they said was, the new LCAP format that we already gave everybody, you're not using it this year. So all the work we put into the new LCAP format, they took that away. The third thing they said is, by July 1st, every district has to produce a document called Coronavirus Impacts. The document, they haven't created it, so we don't know what it looks like, but it's due in 7 weeks. So, because I can't do it July 1st, I have to do it at a board meeting, it has to be public,
Oh my lord.
So, then they said, in December, you're gonna have to adopt your LCAP along with your first interim budget. But that's gonna be a different LCAP format than the one we just gave you 6 months ago. So you're gonna create a 1-year LCAP. So what my presentation to the board tonight is I wanna ask this board to consider the idea of our district adopting the LCAP we are ready to adopt. And if the state tells us it's only a 1-year LCAP for this year, that's fine, with the intention of us fundamentally keeping the core of this new LCAP. So it in effect becomes a 4-year LCAP for us, because we've done all of the research with our parents and staff and community. And I somewhat feel that it is unfair to children to go into next year not having a plan. I think that's the worst thing we can do. So I wanna encourage the board.
Just because the state doesn't have a plan, doesn't mean we have to follow suit.
And it doesn't, just because other districts
Right,
behind
didn't do their homework.
Right, that doesn't mean that we have to be
Yeah.
behind the
I agree.
8 ball.
So basically, let me explain how that would work. We would still do the required July 1st report because we have to. We would still technically adopt that 1-year LCAP before December because we have to. But more importantly, we would have our own internal Hollister School District LCAP that we say the intent of this is a 4-year LCAP. So we wouldn't send that to the state because they're not gonna accept the 4-year LCAP, they're gonna accept the 1-year LCAP. So we'll send them a 1-year LCAP. And then at this time next year, we'll adopt the 3-year LCAP, but in reality for us, it will be a 4-year
Right.
LCAP,
That makes
which
sense.
is even better
We already did our homework.
than a 3-year LCAP.
Right.
So that's basically what I want to explain to the board tonight is, this is gonna come out to many districts as a list of things that have to get done. But the way I'm looking at it is, we have devoted a lot of time to preparing ourselves to put in a program next year that emphasizes Orton Gillingham reading. It emphasizes co-teaching for children with special needs. It emphasizes Eureka Math. It emphasizes out-of-school academic supports. It highlights parent involvement, puts the long list. So why wait a year and leave ourselves in limbo? Because for me, the LCAP is more about how we're educating children than it is simply a place to put how we're spending money.
So if you could just explain to me, the action you're asking us specifically, what is this resolution specifically asking us in layman's terms?
So this item is not a resolution. This item is just a report.
Okay,
I put it under discussion as opposed to report because I wanted to have this conversation because basically what I'm asking the board to do is to be aware and to support the idea of us adopting in effect a 4-year LCAP as opposed to a 1-year LCAP and then a separate 3-year LCAP.
okay.
Because part of what we have to do, we have to do what the state requires us to do, and we're going to do. I'm gonna make sure I keep us in line and we meet all those timelines. But what I'm more concerned about is that our community and that our educators know what the plan is.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine showing up to school in August and saying, I don't know what our goals are for the year.
We're working on it.
That's what's gonna happen in many
That's
districts,
crazy.
is the school year starts and, oh, we still have last year's goals, this year, I'll tell you in December. I mean,
Yeah, that
No.
doesn't make sense.
No, I get it, I'm just, will the stakeholders, will they agree with well, we're not voting on anything, but if we were, would they agree, the very participants in the LCAP, that, yep, we're pleased with the Hollister School Board,
and
that they're doing this?
where I would put that, Rob, is I would put that in, let me show you the participant feedback. Let me show you the participant surveys, let me show you the engagement that we took to arrive at this. Because many of the things we're going to do next year are different than we did this year. And
Yeah, and are based on
the parents are asking us to do
to
this.
do, yeah.
So if we didn't, we would in effect be ignoring their feedback. One thing we haven't talked a lot about, but I will bring to the group's discussion is we currently know that the research tells us that our children over this time of being out of school are being subjected to new and more intensified stresses pertaining to their mental health. And we are a district that does not have a single elementary school counselor position in the district. We need to rectify that. We need to hire a person or two or three or four. So I want to report to the board tonight. We have confirmation that we'll have 4 San Jose State University counseling interns that will be under the supervision of the LCSW working exclusively for our district next year.
Finally.
In addition, we're moving forward with a grant coordinated with Superintendent Lamano and the Department of San Benito County Department of Mental Health and our district and others to bring in as many as 4 full-time clinicians to work with children. And since we're the biggest district, they would spend the vast majority of time. So we could potentially have as many as 6, 7, 8, 9 people working in our district next year. So what our plan to do is, with this LCAP, is to rise on the services that they'll provide. Because it's not just about saying, we're gonna spend $1 million on it, it's about saying, you don't need to, because we have this program in place, we have this grant in place, it's what are they doing?
Right.
That's the big change I'm gonna bring to the table with the way the LCAP will read more like a thorough explanation of what we are doing, as opposed to a listing of how we spend money.
I still am a little confused.
Wait, I have my.
Jan had her hand up, sorry. You couldn't see her, but she had her hand up.
What I wanna know is, we still have to do something for the state in regards to long distance learning.
Yes,
We have to deal with that. So that would be part of that LCAP, would be the counseling.
I would describe that more as a required report, and I will work with our district administration. We will write the report we're required to do.
Okay, cause I think, part of it is when getting kids back to school is gonna be really important, and for a lot of the social reasons. For your special ed, it's really important that they get back to school. The feeling, the kids get to see their friends, that whole social aspect. And is that part of the counseling? Help me out here, Diego, is that all part of it, or?
So because children with special needs, since you brought up that example, have now been out of school for 6 weeks and likely will be out of school for another 12 weeks. That has created a time span for them where they're not receiving, they're not able to interact with peers.
Right.
So that's created a whole new gap. What I'm saying is, I know that's going to be the case in August. So we have to develop LCAP actions now to be prepared for August. What this executive order does, is telling school districts for the next 4 months, focus on adapting to the coronavirus challenge. What I'm saying to the board is, we need to do more than what is being expected of us
Right,
in this executive order.
Okay,
We need to do, in effect, both. We need to comply
well,
with
that's what I'm
it.
asking,
Yeah.
so we're gonna do that as
We're
well.
gonna comply with the executive
Okay.
order, and I'm going to recommend that the board adopt our own 4-year plan for the health.
Cause will there be something for the autistic kids
Absolutely.
in your, because that's where, Charlie has really fallen apart. And
Absolutely,
I'm sure he's not the only autistic child
absolutely.
that has regressed.
District-wide, over 75 kids.
Yeah.
Just in that one classification.
Yeah.
Steve, you have a,
So, I guess I wanna get this straight. The one I'm most concerned about, I understand the 4-year plan. This thing on July 1st,
yes,
are what you've just been talking about going to be part of that? Is this the
No.
coronavirus part of the plan that we're supposed to submit? That part confuses me. July 1st, what needs to be ready by July 1st?
I'm making it more complicated, Steve, because of what I'm recommending to the board. What I'm saying is, the minimum requirement for school districts is to adopt the budget by July 1st.
Right.
And to give a written report that is adopted publicly and discussed by the board about how the school district has continued to educate children during this coronavirus
Okay,
situation.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, as the superintendent, if I'm not prepared to move forward with a plan in August, I have failed the staff and students of this district.
no, I understand that
Yeah.
part perfectly. I just wanted to make sure that what's due on July 1st is going to be covered with this. It sounds like it is.
It's two separate things, Steve. It's two separate things. We're going to do, and the reason you don't have it is because they haven't created it.
Yeah.
I can't show it
that's
to
what
you,
I
you haven't seen it. I
Why
don't know
not?
what it's gonna be. When they give it to us, I'll share it with you. Right now, we're talking about sort of words on paper and ideas, thought bubbles. I don't know what it's gonna be, I don't think it'll be very rigorous, but, if you have about 10 hours, I can explain to you what we've been doing verbally. So that's what we're gonna do, we're gonna sit down and whatever form they decide and whatever stuff, we'll type it in there, but that's not good enough. And what I'm saying is, I don't wanna lose 6 months or 12 months.
No,
I got
I
that.
wanna have our LCAT
Yeah,
say, hey, we put in all the work, we went out and got the feedback, we're ready to go.
Yeah, this is smart, I'm telling, I'm getting various text messages. The will of the people is bending towards, they wanna get back to normal as soon as possible. And I bet most of your LCAT, not all, will be somewhat normal. So I think this is probably a really good thing. The document you have to write, I'm sorry that you have to take time out and your staff has to take time out, especially because we just, nobody knows what they're doing. I
yeah,
mean, I have exposure to, 4 different school districts and I see disappointment from the teachers, I see disappointment from the administration. Everybody seems to be doing something different and the home situation, that's a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
So, good luck.
And I think it's just, like you said, clarifying for everyone, what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing, because, you're gonna have this requirement in December, you're gonna have that requirement, but we still wanna continue with, like you said, our internal, and this is all that dedication and time from every person, stakeholder that contributed to developing it. This awesome document, that's what's going to be what leads us, regardless of what the state wants, but this is what we're gonna be moving forward with.
That's right.
It confuses me because that date of July 1st, you just hear from Gavin Newsom today saying, oh, well, we might bring the kids back July 1st.
yeah,
Start school July 1st.
I don't even know how realistic that would be.
I mean, mean, what is he trying to do here?
I don't know.
It makes no
You should've
sense to me.
said
No,
something.
he said, I think he said 31st.
Was it the 30th?
July 31st?
Yeah, it was
Well,
31st.
either way, I mean,
It's ridiculous, it's just like those hallways, we're gonna go this way on that hallway and
and you're only making it 2 weeks earlier than you'd normally open up anyway.
I'm laughing
It
as
makes
I
no
do this.
sense to me.
I'm just cracking up. Like, oh yeah, you've never been in a middle school.
Yeah. Or high school.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. Is this your presentation item as well?
Eric,
Eric.
14E. 14E is the oral summary of compensation and fringe benefits offered to Superintendent Diego Ochoa, and I will read the summary for us. Summary, AB 1437 requires executive compensation to be orally summarized in open session before it is approved by the board. The superintendent's total compensation will be $209,000 per school year. The term of the contract will be July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2024. The superintendent shall be entitled to receive the same health and welfare benefits package that is provided to other full-time district senior management employees. It is intended that the number of workdays in each school year covered by this contract shall be 227 days, including vacation days. The superintendent shall accrue the same sick leave and vacation leave, 15 days and 23 days as district senior management employees. Dues to professional education organizations will be provided. Also, other annual membership dues in other or professional and community service organizations may be approved by the board. The administration recommends that the board receive the oral summary of compensation and fringe benefits, and attached as the documentation is the contract itself, with numbers pages 1 through 9, with term on page 1 and salary on page 4, and then passing over to page 5. So with that, myself or Erica is available for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
so I know when we had talked about the contract, some of the concerns that we had shared were all pretty much buttoned up on the contract, correct?
That would be Jan, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
did you read through it?
Yeah,
It
I
pretty much,
just, I couldn't remember,
yeah, one of your suggestions was also put in there.
okay,
And one of the additional pieces of language, and I'll point to it for the board. If you take a look at page 4 in the contract, what it indicates is there's language to suggest that the board, subject to his receipt of a satisfactory evaluation in each school year of this contract pursuant to section 4.e above, the board may, at its discretion, grant superintendent the same increase provided to district senior management employees in a given school year, if any. This year happens to be 2%. Superintendent is under no obligation to accept any salary increase and may decline by providing written notice to the board. So what I want to share with the board is I have prepared that written notice, and I will be providing that written notice to the clerk and the president, indicating that I won't accept any pay increase for this year, given the grim reality of the costs associated with coronavirus.
Since we've had to lay off some people, we appreciate
It's the
that.
right thing to do.
Definitely.
And I also want to mention to the board that the salary that is included in this contract is the same salary that I was hired at in January of 2019. So it's this isn't a different salary or higher, so it's the same salary.
I wanna just publicly state for the record, you know, for most superintendents, the ones that I've worked with, I've not seen someone with your level of integrity yet. And the fact that you are willing to give up your raise that was honored to every other single employee because, you know cuts are coming, is a huge giving up of yourself, of your family, for our district. And I, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate every single thing that you do for us, including this gesture. It means a lot. I'm thankful and I'm honored to have you as our superintendent.
And thank you for saying that, Liz, and I wanted the board to know that it goes both ways, because I didn't just take a job, I moved my family here.
Yeah.
And I have a child going to school here, and he is excited every day to go to school, and he loves his teacher, and he loves his school staff, and he loves his principal, and he loves being a Ladling leopard. And I have a home that we're proud to have, and that we live in a community where we feel safe and we feel a part of the community even though we're new. And that plays into what we have negotiated here, which is a 4-year contract where I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to leave this place. I don't want to be a superintendent in some other districts, and I want to be here. We feel that as a family, this is the right place for us to be, and it is a huge honor to be a superintendent here, and one that it goes without saying, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to be in a position like superintendent of the Hollister School District, and I want to thank the board for giving me this opportunity.
I would like to also say that I have looked at every superintendent's contract since Don Slezak, going back to the late 1980s.
Wow.
There is not one contract, I was musing at your summary. Do you know how long a summary would have taken for some of the other contracts? We have paid for places up at Ridgemark in the past. There has been all sorts of add-ons and things. It's the cleanest contract I've ever seen, and I'd have to concur with Liz. I'm stunned, really, to be able to retain somebody of your ability, as you've been demonstrating since you came here, to be able to have a contract so free of entangling things that you would have to look at askance. Like I say, it's second to none as far as I could see.
Well, I don't think the grass has grown underneath this feet. You move too fast.
I was like, I don't understand. You're doing one of those Eureka Man things to me.
Yeah.
You have this COVID, you have a new school,
I know.
you have, I mean,
This first year
it's
was,
just like,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
How do you do it?
and it's all been with a temperament that I've never seen, that I've just never, it's hard to tell that anything gets to you. I'm sure things do, but you don't,
Look like it.
you don't let it affect your judgment in the sense of, you are always considerate about others before yourself. And just doing this is that huge. I'm putting, I'm putting my livelihood basically, because this is your livelihood. This is what you provide for your family. And so it is a sacrifice. I see it as a sacrifice, and I appreciate it, like I said, from the bottom of my heart, because I know things are probably gonna get a little bit tougher, but we're all in it together. And, the sacrifices start at the top, like you said. you know, I gotta be the first one to show and be that role model, and you have been from day one.
And I wanna be here when things are tough.
And
I wanna see.
we want you here.
I wanna see
We're all
the
gonna be
district
here with you.
Yeah,
as a parent too.
Yeah.
Not just as a student.
no.
It was really hard to make these cuts tonight.
Yeah, it is.
But even at that, again, I wanna say, nobody likes to do this, but the thought that went into this, it wasn't just willy-nilly
No,
going, blah, 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 which
yeah.
I've seen in the past.
Yeah,
There was
we
an
have.
actual thought going behind it. It's incredible.
We've seen cuts that were just so arbitrary. It made no sense.
Well, when we used to lay off so many teachers, just to
Yeah.
rehire them again, it
That's-
was like,
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
how in the world, how much time and money are we spending doing this cycle? It's
Yeah,
like, no.
and you knew they were gonna hire them
stop.
back, and what do? We've lost good
Some
teachers.
very
Yeah.
good teachers, Linda.
Yeah,
Very good teachers.
But, you know, the fact that you're here, you bought a, like you said, you bought a house here. We haven't had a superintendent that has wanted to
Do
live in
that.
our community, you
Ever.
know?
For how long?
I don't know, I think
Uh,
longer than I know.
Not since I
15,
worked here.
20?
Wow.
Sleazak didn't.
He lived in
very-
Outcross, right
very con-
around the block from me.
I would say, I can't even think, I was
Yeah.
before I came,
Wow.
Yeah,
and I've been here a long time.
so,
We're really lucky.
yes, we are fortunate and we are blessed. Thank you. Thank you for picking us.
Yes.
That takes us-
Add me a hello.
Item.
I know. Keep going back to that one.
Item 14F is approval of employment contract between Superintendent Diego Ochoa and the Hollister School
That's,
District.
I have that as G,
Yeah, the number got,
okay,
on the separate agenda, the item cover sheet is correct.
okay,
The agenda, if you look at, it went down C, D, F, G. and
Okay.
It should have been E, F, so I apologize for that mistake.
Okay.
Wow, wait a minute, time out, does that change anything?
Whoa.
alright, I'd like to make a motion to approve the employment contract for Diego Ochoa, Superintendent of the Hollister School District. Do I have to read the government code or
No,
Yeah, you can say as presented.
as presented?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Discussion?
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to give my comments now. Diego made the point to me the other day, I forget what we were talking about, but he said, Rob, you just, you don't hold back or something like that, and I don't wanna hold back here. Diego walks the line between classroom educator and knowing really what's going on in the classroom, how the classroom is changing, and I presume how you teach and things like that, as well as the chief executive officer of the business part of the school district very well. And that's what I appreciate very much, but most of all, I think about when Superintendent Ochoa first got here, he fit into our community almost instantly. I think I was at a city council meeting over some contentious issue and you were there as well. And I mean, I remember looking over at you and, you know, because we were so crowded, we were standing. And I didn't even think to say hello to you. It was like, oh yeah, Diego's here, you know? But anyway, we are very, very lucky, I think, to have you in this position, and I'm glad to see that your family's here. Because some of the other superintendents, it was just, they never really did fit in. And they had that out-of-towner syndrome, like, I know more than you. You've never said that. And so talk about things that will move the needle, which is what I'm always interested in, is I do believe that you can move the needle. I think you got shortchanged because of this COVID-19 thing, and again, we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm very glad to have you here, and I'm very glad to have you in a longer term contract, and I just wanna, give you my commitment. Anything I can do to help you, I'm here for you, and to support you, not to tell you what to do, but to help you get to where you think we should go.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I concur with what you just said.
Thank you. So no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, board member reports. Carla.
Nothing.
Liz?
Well, I did go with Diego yesterday around, and it was very, like I say, it brought a tear to my eye. The organization of the passing out of the food, the quality of our employees is second to none, heroic. And I was just extremely impressed, especially again with the teacher we just happened to run into. And she started talking about how she's been interacting with the students and been able to go from 12 to 24 of her kids. It was just a very enlightening day.
Okay, I have a couple of things. We've got some, I don't know what we're gonna do, I don't know what we can do. But normally we do something for retirees every year. And I don't know what the district has thought about, but we've got,
A pretty important one.
How many do we have?
I know Erica just left, I don't know how many.
Who do we have?
Kathy Sharp's retired.
It's a somewhat small number this year, but
Yeah.
we're planning, the issue is just
How? I don't know
physical
how.
distance.
Congregating.
One of the teachers who's retiring that you're referring to was selected as the teacher of the year.
Mhm.
And all of her colleagues last Friday did a processional in their vehicles.
Yeah, yeah.
3:45 cheering for her, honking their horns and congratulating her.
What school?
Amaze.
Kathy Sharp, yeah. I think she's 38 years she's taught, but 34, 35 in our district.
Yeah,
She
she's-
retired 1 year before me.
And her loss is a huge loss for us.
Mhm.
She's awesome. She's an A+ teacher.
And Jerry Bonvy
And
is
Jerry
retiring.
too.
She was my aide.
Yeah,
What school's that?
she's Maze
Maze
too,
too,
she's
okay.
science teacher.
feel old.
Dynamite.
Yeah.
Dynamite teacher.
Really?
Really good teacher.
Yeah, Jerry and Kathy and I were, on the same team.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So then, that's like, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but I don't know what, it would be nice to do something. And then, when are we gonna start looking for, people for our new school? And I don't know how your management has thought about that, or.
That'd be a future agenda item.
I don't know if that's a future agenda item, but I'd kind of like to know what the process is gonna be and when you're gonna start, maybe some informational item or something about that. I might be too ahead of myself,
Yeah, move to future agenda.
move it future, I don't know. These are things that when I drive by the school, I'm like, well, who's gonna run this school, and makes you think. And then, are we gonna get a new website? Did we do that? So, do you know when
Let's
that?
add that to future agenda items also. We can't discuss it because it's not on the agenda.
Right,
But I'll add that to future.
okay,
agenda.
Are
thank
we
you.
doing future agenda?
Not yet.
Yeah.
No, but.
Okay.
Oh, I thought that's what we were.
just making.
Board
board member
reports.
Oh, well, I had
That's what I
nothing for
did.
that. So I went right to the next one. Sorry,
How
Rob.
about you, Rob?
Yeah, good.
Sorry, Rob.
No, the one thing I feel really good about is I'm in the bird's eye seat because of work on what school districts, might do for distance learning, now and in the future, and again, as I said before, nobody really knows what they're doing. My biggest concern is, so far, everyone that I see, none of them are classroom teachers, they all have doctorates in education, and this and that, I'm just going, have you ever been in a second grade classroom or a third grade classroom? I mean, I never have, but at least I think I have a really good view.
Yeah.
And so I'm really concerned about it, but I'm also very excited about it because if I hear or see of anything that's magnificent that might help Diego, I'll, at least I look at what's happening here, maybe we should try this. So other than that, I'm also very impressed because I'm working from home now, but I'm out about town, and you know what I don't see all over town in the middle of the day is a lot of kids,
That's right.
right? And so that must,
I thought for sure that was gonna happen.
yeah.
Me too.
I agree with you, I don't
They're
see
in their
it,
house.
I don't see it.
So, and talking to city council members and board of supervisors and, people, others, law enforcement, they're not seeing this huge, effect of this. So I think we must be reaching some, that's all I can say. That's all the announcements I have. Future agenda items, Jan.
Oh, wait,
I think we know one of them.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carla.
go in order. I'd like for us to talk about promotion ceremonies, if we're gonna participate.
Is it gonna be virtual or?
I want to also, if included in that, if we could look at ways to honor those kids that are in honor roll, even if it is via Zoom. I have a friend in Oakland Unified and they did a Latino honor roll, that's what they do with their program, but for us, everyone honor roll would be good. And then, I'd like for us to talk about an update on the project in the Calaveras neighborhood, the art project. I don't know what it's called, does it have a name?
It is the community art project, the medallions,
Oh,
the crosswalk medallions project.
I'd like to find out how we are, if we are, or are we participating in that, or what's going on with that? And then there was one more. I think that's it, I remember which one.
For me, it was still going back to an update on the Rancho concession stand with the city. Part of the agreement when we signed all our agreements with city use agreement with them, we collaborated them all into, instead of separate ones at each site, one master one, but part of that agreement was they were gonna actually follow through with what they said the agreement we had at Rancho they were actually gonna follow through, and that agreement included that concession stand. That should have been built many, many, many moons ago, but nobody held their feet to the fire, so, part of, again, and looking at these agreements with the city on a regular basis to ensure that we are getting, the cost for usage of our fields and having some control over that usage so that certain things can get done, giving our fields a rest, and so they're not so stressed out and they don't look like Mays, Goblin Hill, potholes and gophers and, you're trying to do all this abatement in Calaveras, but when we don't properly take care of our fields because we're not letting them rest because of so much usage, we have to build some system in place, and I know that's a lot for Aaron because, he's got the school, but a big portion of, our expenses go out to watering and, maintaining, large portions of property. So we still haven't been able to manage and gauge that, to have good fields that even our kids can use. You know, and it's sad, but,
We'll have a report for that.
okay.
I just want to reiterate again, I am a little nervous. I looked that up again. It didn't say July 31st. It said July.
From the governor?
And from the
Yeah.
governor. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I think it's something we need to at least talk about.
Or find
If
out?
it happens, that's pretty quick. That's 2 months
So when
away.
you say like resume
Yeah,
Yeah,
come back.
for
he
this
said
school year?
because there's been so much learning loss,
Yeah,
that the kids have lost
see
so
that.
much in learning.
Was that today?
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, I was working on.
It concerns me. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't want to ignore it.
I'll have a report.
Okay,
yes,
all right.
thank you for bringing that up.
well, okay, so I wanted to feel out what we were gonna do for retirees. And that would probably be in the same line with our promotions. And, when are we going to start looking for personnel, for the new school and an idea of how many kids are gonna be opening up that school, you know, that kind of stuff, and how many teachers are we gonna need, and, cause I don't know when you would start that.
Soon,
Yeah, as I was thinking that.
I'll have a report for you at our next meeting.
Well, I don't think it has to be the next meeting, maybe you wanna wait a little bit, I don't know, it's just something on my mind.
No, we'll be ready. We're already
Oh, you already
80% down the road.
Oh, okay, alright.
It's a timing issue because we'll discuss it at our next board meeting, but there's certain times where you wanna get that message out. You don't wanna do it too early, you don't wanna wait too long. So
When is the school opening again?
next time,
Ooh.
Yeah, cause when you hire a principal, are we gonna hire, cause sometimes you wanna get somebody hired like soon.
Well, or you may
How about we
shift
put it on an
somebody
agenda?
already,
we'll have it on.
Yes.
Yes,
We'll have it on.
so.
thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, is it possible at our next school board meeting to get, a snapshot, not the super detailed report, but the fiscal health, like overall? Cause like, I can't look at individual numbers, I need to see the whole picture. What I'm most worried about, of course, is the reserves. With any commentary on your part about if there's chatter coming from the legislature, are they gonna give us relief on reserves? And so that, and then you are due to give us your plan by May 31st, is that when it is? So by our next meeting?
Let me pull the date here.
It's somewhere.
Contract.
Contract.
Yeah.
Well, the governor's revise is usually May 5th.
It's somewhere, normally we get the rights to go to the, the capital
Yeah, but that's not
advisories
gonna
on it.
happen.
May 15th.
So
They
that
don't
would
even
be-
have a Zoom thing?
that would
Oh, I'm
be
sure they
before the
will.
next board
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, that has something for us.
That'd be good.
In 2 weeks, May 15th.
Okay, so
And
do you think,
the reason we chose that date was so that it would be, you would receive it before a closed session for the regular board meeting. May 30th, we would have missed the main meeting, so we would have had to wait 30 days to see it.
okay, so how's that gonna happen?
We'll agendize it for, closed session.
Okay,
So the May
I'll send it.
revise?
I'll send it to you all individually, as in, as long as you don't discuss it, we're fine with
Right.
around it. But I'll send you my needs assessment for the district and when we meet, for the regular school board meeting in May, we'll have a discussion about it.
So the May revise is this coming month,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm assuming that's not gonna be held traditionally. It'll probably be a Zoom,
It'll be a web, yeah, it'll be
Web-based.
web-based.
and now that it's web-based, then we could all participate.
That's what we're planning to be able to purchase up to 10 licenses, which would allow our 2 union presidents and then our board to be able to attend as well.
Perfect.
And we would meet
Here?
here?
No, you just do it from your
Just
home.
at home, okay.
You just do it from your home.
Okay, do you have to do it at that time, or can you watch it at any time?
I don't know. I'll
Okay,
find out.
we'll find out.
I'll find out.
All right, no other business to be conducted. I'll ask for a motion to convene the meeting, or convene the meeting, to adjourn the meeting at 9:18.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None heard, 5-0.
We have a